on social issues. Certainly, for example, on issues like abortion or even on gun control, they are pretty gung-ho on owning guns. But on interventionism and intervening in the affairs of other countries, the Republicans are more of this hands-off approach type of people.
Okay. All right, Professor Chilani and Bazin, thank you so much. Just stay on with us. We're going to see when at all is the Republican candidate Donald Trump going to be addressing the West Palm Beach. We are, remember, waiting for him to address that watch party there. But let's take a look at what's happening at CNN. What are the further projections really saying?
50 in the battleground states. So you have to eliminate the third-party candidates and just get above him. Just get above 49, get 49.5. Well, Trump tonight blew that part up, at least where we are right now, because he's above 50 in Pennsylvania. He's above 50 in Michigan, where he was at 48 again. And you go back to 2016, 48. Trump was a constant, except for this year he grew. He grew, or he's growing anyway. We don't have the final numbers right now, but he's above 50 there. And then in battleground Wisconsin, I won't go back and forth again through it again, but he was at 47, 48, 2016, 2020, and there he is above 50% with again. This state decided by 20,000 votes, 2 elections in a row. Donald Trump's ahead by 125,000. This state won by Joe Biden last time by 154,000 votes. A big win for the Democrats here. Then the Democratic governor wins in 2022. The Democrats make gain in the legislatures. Democrats think Michigan is growing in their favor. Donald Trump's 243,000 votes ahead with 69%. Still some room there maybe to see it happen. That's the one with the most outstanding vote. And Anderson, as I throw back to you, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, so critical to Trump cracking the blue wall, flipping the blue wall in 2016. His biggest disappointment when he lost it in 2020. Still won't admit he lost it in 2020. And now you see in 2024, again, was an 80,000 vote.
Let's now take this across to CNN's Paula Newton, who is live with us from Florida at the West Palm Beach. Paula, we do see and probably hear that the plans for celebrations have already been set in motion by Team Donald Trump. What do you see being planned out there?
Absolutely. There have been so many, dozens and dozens of Trump allies, people who have worked for Donald Trump, who have just entered the room. We are told that, in fact, the former president has left Mar-a-Lago and will arrive on the stage behind me momentarily. He has absolutely decided that he will claim victory here. His allies here have already told me that this is time to celebrate. They are taking this win despite the fact that the election hasn't been called yet. Really, it has been a sobering reminder that Donald Trump has been able to put a coalition here to be able to defeat Kamala Harris, the first woman who many believe in the Democratic Party would be the first woman president, and it does not look like that history will be made again as well. Donald Trump, his campaign advisors saying that they have put together quite a coalition. They believe it is a diverse coalition. They also believe that right now they have flipped the Senate. They are hopeful that they will retain the House of Representatives. They have quite a mandate to govern here. It is looking as if the former president will as well win the popular vote, which is something he has not done, certainly in the prior 2 elections. We continue to await Donald Trump. I am keeping a very careful eye on the door. We know he's left Mar-a-Lago. We expect him here any minute.
Right. And Paula, you know, Trump has managed to win at least 2 of those battleground states. He's leading in the rest of the 5. What do you think really has worked for Donald Trump?
It is an interesting thing, but given CNN's exit polls, many Americans at the end of the day seem to have been afraid that Kamala Harris would pull the country too far to the left. The majority of them seem to have rejected a progressive agenda. Immigration made people nervous, but also those cultural touchstones, things like transgender rights. The Trump campaign ran a lot of those ad campaigns throughout those states for many, many months, and that seems to have hurt her. And again, remember, she has not been at this a long time. At that CNN debate, everyone was shocked at Biden's performance, and we have to remember, she has not been allowed to be the candidate for that long. Was it more of what Kamala Harris couldn't do other than what the Trump campaign was able to do? We will never know for sure. But right now, Donald Trump, this has been his most successful campaign, and it seems to have won him the presidency.
Right, and rightfully so, Paula, all eyes are on the Trump HQ. Now, Republicans have also gained control of the Senate after 4 years. Now, how do you think is the Trump camp looking at that? And this probably is going to be making the presidency of Donald Trump's even more powerful.
Absolutely. And remember, we have the 6 conservative justices on the Supreme Court as well. This is full steam ahead. When you look at the Trump agenda, everything that he has articulated in the last few months that he wants to do, and remember, that involves deporting, he says, millions of illegal migrants here in the United States. He is saying he's going to go full steam ahead of that. Remember, there are many points of controversy with that policy. If he had not flipped the Senate, if perhaps the Democrats regain the House, there might be some backstops. If he ends up with all of Congress plus the Supreme Court, we'll be able to have a very ambitious agenda. So look for chapter and verse what he articulated in his policies for the last few months, and he may be able to get much of that done. We are again waiting the president's arrival. We believe they will announce him shortly.
Right, Paula Newton there. Probably any minute now, Donald Trump is going to be arriving at the West Palm Beach, like Paula is reporting from, and we are going to see him address that huge gathering, the watch party of the Republicans, all the supporters of Donald. Right now, what we're doing is cutting back live to CNN, and let's see what's happening over there.
Working class party, that is a shock, but the policy implications for planet Earth are yet to be known.
I mean, I think that's the real open question. So are we getting 20% tariffs? That's going to be devastating for the economy. Are there going to be mass deportations on American soil? That's what he ran on, and I believe it's actually the mandate the voters gave
listen,
him.
so I think on the tariff things, as you see, tariffs are a negotiating tool, right? That's what it was in the first administration. That's what it'll be in this administration. There are 350,000 criminal aliens here in the United States. I think it'd probably take 4 years just to find, locate.
Let me go back to my guest on the broadcast. Berzin Wagmar continues to be with us right here on CNN News 18. Berzin, let's talk about the key 7 swing states. And out of them, Michigan was one state that had Kamala Harris leading. But unfortunately, even that is not working in her favor. Where do you think has wrong over there? We did see how, Donald Trump had ended up slamming her campaign, her position on EVs. Do you think all of that together has worked in favor of Donald Trump, and none of that Arab American Muslim population working and voting for the Democrats seems to be working for Kamala Harris?
Yes, and particularly with following the October 7th massacre, we saw Arab Americans who feel frustrated at the administration's partiality towards Israel as they perceive it, which is not really the case because Israel has always been important to the American foreign policy context. So you will see, and there have been spectacular displays leading up to the election of Arab Americans stating that they would register a protest vote in favor of Trump against Ms. Harris. And the interesting thing is this, that despite what happened in Gaza and in Israel, which is still battling on 7 fronts of war in the Middle East, the Abraham Accords do hold with Bahrain and the UAE. And that was Mr. Trump's triumph in his first administration, and credit where credit due to him on that. And that has held in due course right through after October 7th. Regardless of what Arab Americans and other Muslims in the diaspora, American Muslims in the diaspora feel, it is interesting to note that the response has been rather mute officially from, say, Bahrain, Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, and elsewhere about what Israel is pursuing as its self-defense. So, and also that points out that there isn't a Muslim monolithic voice. Arab Americans as diaspora immigrant sorties may have these notions. Likewise with Pakistani Americans, Iranian Americans, so on and so forth. And it is that demographic that has traditionally always the hyphenated identities, as I pointed out, who veer towards Democrat politics. It was so with the Indian Americans once upon a time too. Not anymore, as Indian Americans and even as British Indians who prosper and do better tend to take a more conservative stance in life and therefore will veer towards either the Republicans on that side of the pond or the Conservatives where I am in London. So that is to be seen. And then, of course, as Paula pointed out, there were these cultural touchstones, the intense vocery and the hysterics after the BLM movement of George Floyd's killing that happened during the pandemic, and transgender rights and the far left agenda that you see in California and New York on both coasts, run by coastal elites, as it were, and a progressive identity and affirmation of politics which are life-denying, which are so anti-American in its very self. People who perceive views of America as a settler colonist society and who smack off downright unpatriotism and are ashamed to call themselves American and proud to say that they are so, that flies in the face of the crowd that we're seeing gathering here at the convention center at Trump headquarters in Florida, who are decent, income-earning, meat and two-veg sorts who believe in their country, faith, family, and flag. And this is what we see in California and New York are just simply aberrations. They don't speak to the American psyche. That is one thing, the traditional American settled identities of, quite frankly, Caucasian and black voters, and Hispanics too. Then you have the immigrants who came in from the 60s, the hyphenated identities, as I pointed out. There has been a demographic shift, and they tend not necessarily chime with what are traditional American values, and immigrants tend to be rather disaffected, generally speaking, and they will not hold to the politics that traditional Americans hold. One random example, in the aftermath of Osama's killing, which President Obama announced, it was in the early hours of the morning in Washington, D.C., as crowds of American youth gathered with their stars and stripes, it was mostly a sea of white Caucasian American men chanting USA and that we did it and vindicated what happened in September 2001. You could hardly see many colored Americans, these hyphenated identity Americans, chiming in with that sentiment that America has triumphed and good has triumphed over evil. So that tells you where we stand with that kind of crowd. And it is that kind of ambivalence in these diasporic communities that doesn't sit well with the settled identities of Americans, the whites and blacks and Hispanics that I refer to, who have no other extra loyalty to an old country or elsewhere, particularly with whites and blacks, for whom America is first and foremost the only country they know.
What do they resonate with? You mentioned about the 2020, George Floyd episode, and nothing seems to have worked in favor of Harris despite all of that, and despite that schooling that you were talking about that Barack Obama gave to specifically the black men of America. We will, if we go back to one of the key and biggest swing states, that's Pennsylvania, it has seen how the black American voters, especially the males, they have doubled for Donald Trump.
Because that chimes in with a general view in that Mr. Trump stands for a no-nonsense, rough and ready alpha male personality, and that black males, alongside other males in the demographic who feel that they have had to pander to fourth wave feminism, progressive politics purported by intellectuals, university goers, journalists, the general commentators in the public square as such, who beat down upon dead white males all the time as the source of all evil, as the source of all problems. Now, that is not exactly with the black male vote, but where they do come into the picture and they embrace Mr. Trump is because he doesn't sound like a glib insider in the capital beltway. He is not a DC man. He tells it as it is. And he has this, what you see is what you get with me, take it or leave it attitude. So that does work in his favor. Miss Harris, Mr. Biden, and the others would always answer questions or project themselves in political terms. There is diplomacy and tact on their part. Mr. Trump doesn't set any premium by that. And he never has or never will. So that does go down well with the, as you would say in India, the aam aadmi or the common man. And that is what is chiming with the left behinds, those are within the continental US, not the coastal elites, not the ones who can fix the system, not the Davos Club going sorts. And therefore, that is why we see it is the politics of despair and frustration that even if we are not doing well for ourselves, at least we stick it to the system with a, finger up attitude. And that's where the vote goes in favor.
The women voters there, Akbar, the fact that there was so much celebrity endorsement, especially by women influencers for Kamala Harris. There was that entire talk about how women must have an autonomy on their own bodies, that entire revocation of the abortion law, the Roe v. Wade, and none of that also seemed to have worked in favor of Kamala Harris. Where do you think that really, in that area, did her campaign really lag behind?
Briefly and bluntly put, Ms. Harris is an underwhelming politician. She has been for all purposes and intents. Now, partly it's not her fault in that a vice president always lives in the shadow of the president. That is always a given. But even on her own and her past, when she was the prosecutor general in California, for example, her policies were not exactly memorable as such. She does, and incidentally, but then you can't fix, everything is just thrown up in the air with so many points. For example, we know what Mr. Trump's perspective is on tariffs and trade. Guess what? Ms. Harris also voted against the USMCA, the US-Canada-Mexico agreement, which replaced NAFTA, the North America Free Trade Agreement. So in that sense, she was also pandering to the working-class Democrat voters, the factories goers, who wanted to see, an America First policy of economic protectionism. Now, she may have made these gestures, which is all very well, because you have to play to all your constituents if you are going to be a one large tent inclusive party, which is what the Democrats have always voted to be, more so than the Republicans in their rhetoric and temper and tone. But it has clearly not gone down well. And therefore, despite the best of attempts and with the women rooting for her across the landscape, it would seem not come to pass as such.
Right, Bazin, stay on with us. We are cutting back across to CNN, and let's see what's happening over there, even as we await Donald Trump and his arrival at Florida to address that watch party as supporters of the Republican Party. Let's take a look.
From here, and then you come over here, Navajo County, and down here in the southern part of the state, Yuma County, 64% of the vote. Again, you think, oh boy, but that's double. That's almost double when you look at the raw vote count there. So how does he do it, right? So that's Arizona. You come up to Nevada. Again, it's not in Clark County. That's Vegas and the suburbs around it. But in these other places, that's, the end of the campaign, when everyone's obsessed about why is he only talking to his base? Well, he was talking to those people, and they turned out, and he overperformed in a lot of Republican counties. Most of the places he overperformed dramatically. This is by 3%. You'll see suburbs where that'll be something we're talking about in the days and weeks after too, by 1 point or 1.5 points. This is 3% or more, right? So when you look at this, don't think about California yet. Let the votes be counted.
So these are all the counties where he overperformed by 3% or more.
Over his 2020 number by 3% or more. And right now we're over 1,000. Counties and townships, mostly up here in New England, but in other places too, they use the word townships, not counties. So they're not trying to, if you live in a township, don't take my county. But there are 4,600 counties and townships, and in more than 1,000 of them, he has overperformed. But the thing is, they're mostly red. There are some blue, and the Democrats have to study that. But the idea of, we always say, are Republicans going to stand up to Donald Trump? Not looking at that, they're not, because he's increasing the vote that he already got. He's up over 2016, up over 2020, and now up over 2024. So you come in here and you look, and it includes Bucks County, very significant, close in there, and these other counties out here that Donald Trump likely wins anyway. So let's just bring this out now and come back to the real world.
Can I just make one more note about Bucks County? Can you bring us back to Bucks County? Yeah,
absolutely.
That was an area where Kamala Harris made a big play, even though it's a county that Donald Trump, that Joe Biden won. She made a big play there. She did an event with Liz Cheney there. She made a real pitch to the Haley voters you talked about. Let's check in with Pamela Brown at the voting desk, who has an update on the ballots left to be counted in Pennsylvania. Pamela?
All right, I'm getting some information for both Philadelphia and Bucks County, that Collar County right outside of Philadelphia, that right now Trump is slightly ahead. Let's talk about Philadelphia soon. We were just talking about the fact that 6,000 mail-in ballots came in there. I'm told by an official there in Philly that maximum left for mail-in ballots, the outstanding mail-in ballots is 31,000. But this official says, look, there's going to be some issues with some of these. The signatures don't match up and so forth, and it's too late for them to be cured. So that's the max amount. Let's turn it over now to Bucks County. Again, this is a county that Biden won in 2020. It's typically a blue-leaning county just outside of Philly. I'm told by an official there are 56,000 mail-in ballots left to count out of 140,000 mail-in ballots cast there overall. And they're still waiting for 41 out of 304 precincts to report the results of in-person Election Day votes as well. I should note these counties across Pennsylvania, including Bucks, including Philadelphia, they're going to be continuously counting there until every mail-in ballot is counted. That's per the law there. Jake?
All right, Pamela, thanks so much. Appreciate it. I'm sorry to interrupt. Take me back to the places where Donald Trump is overperforming. Are there any places where Kamala Harris overperformed from where Biden did?
I'll show you that in just 1 second. I just want to put a button on what Pam was just talking about, in the sense that, so there's votes out there. Maybe Kamala Harris comes back, and that's close.
He's up by 11,000.
Yeah, so maybe she comes back, but again, you're talking about the margins, right? He's winning by 4, right? If she comes back and beats him, it's going to be 50-50, 51 right there. Again, underperforming the president in places. So you asked, are there any places that the vice president is overperforming Joe Biden in 2020? So we could show you that as well. We just bring that out here. Harris overperforming in 2020.
Holy smokes.
There you go. So let this go away and see if there's anything on the east side there.
Literally nothing?
Literally nothing.
Literally not one county?
By 3% or more. At least in the county right now. And so you come in full county there. So there you see, but that's states. Yeah. So in counties, in 58 counties. We just showed Donald Trump was over 1,000 counties of the 4,600 counties and townships across America. So if you do the full county level, there's where you see Harris at the moment. Again, there might be more out here on the West Coast, possible 1 or 2 more as they finish the count here. But in the states that matter, again, I just showed you all those Trump counties. In one county in battleground Pennsylvania, she's outperforming President Biden by 3% or more.
There were Biden stalwarts who argued that kicking him out of the nomination was a mistake. Now, I don't know that I buy that, because I don't know that the Joe Biden of 2024 is the Joe Biden of 2020. But what do you think?
I think that, so let's come out of this map to have this conversation. Just race. And let's turn this off here as well. After the debate, all of the energy collapsed. The debate you moderated with Dana, the Biden-Trump debate, the air came out of the Democratic balloon. Joe Biden was going to get blown out.
So you think it would have been worse because Minnesota and Virginia, New Mexico, Colorado, those would have been...
Would the Democrats have lost those in the end? I don't know the answer to that, but all of the Democrats would have broken with the president. It would have caused amazing dissidence in the Democratic Party. Donors were not going to give money. And again, I don't want to be disrespectful to the President of the United States, but have you seen anything? The Vice President of the United States looks like she's about to lose a presidential election. She was campaigning vigorously from the second she got the nomination up until the votes counting today. Is there any evidence on the table that the President of the United States could do half of what she did?
No.
A third of what she did. I mean,
no.
we could go. I don't want to be mean. I don't want to be mean to the President of the United States.
No, and we saw over the last week him calling Trump supporters garbage, et cetera.
I can tell you from my first trip 15 months ago, people were saying, "Where's the president?" I think one of the legacy conversations about this election is not just going to be the switch from Biden, but the 2 years before that.
Yeah.
You would travel and people would say, "Where's the president?" He was invisible because he couldn't do events, and he wasn't talking about his record and his agenda and trying to explain that cost of living stuff, trying to explain that, it sucks in a lot of places, but look around the world, the United States is actually doing better than most advanced economies. He was missing.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot said and done and told about that. Let's check in with Caitlin Collins, who's at Trump's headquarters, ahead of remarks that were expected by the former president. Caitlin?
Yeah, Jake, just to give you a reality check of where the Trump campaign has been watching this election day play out, they woke up confident this morning that Donald Trump would win this race. But when I was talking to them about what they thought the next few days were going to look like, one, they thought that this would go on for several days. They did not think that the numbers would be as generous as they are, as what the numbers have been coming in, as they have been reported. And they also had counseled Donald Trump that there would likely not be any kind of decision within the next 24 hours or so. Donald Trump himself was frustrated about that and was saying that he wanted to know what the outcome of this race was going to be tonight. And he said, Kristen, that he had not prepared a speech. And obviously, we are seeing now the Trump campaign in real time, as we've been talking to them, are adjusting to what they've been watching play out over the last 3 or 4 hours or so.
Yeah, and he's feeling really good. I talked to a number of people who were with him who said that he is ecstatic, that they had already said that they thought he was in a different headspace than when he went into 2020 when he was angry. He was watching those results come in. But as you said, he still couldn't understand why they weren't going to get the results tonight. Now, obviously, we're seeing a lot more of these states being called right now than even his own team anticipated. I was told that they were looking very carefully at Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, have some idea by tomorrow what those results would look like. But as we're seeing those results coming in, there's so much more of that vote counted in these states than they even anticipated. So clearly that shifted their entire mentality around this. Donald Trump coming here and getting ready to speak.
Well, and so Donald Trump is in the building right now. I should note, we're waiting to hear from him. He has made his way over from Mar-a-Lago, about a 10-minute drive away. And you just think of, I was there at Trump's victory party in 2016 when he first won, and the entire room was shell-shocked after he won Florida, that he had actually won that election. He himself was stunned by winning, and it was kind of this surreal moment to see Trump and his family on stage as he was speaking. Then, of course, we all know what happened 4 years ago when he came out and spoke and declared victory that was not his and never would become his, which belonged to Joe Biden. And so I think the question for a lot of people watching now is what he is going to say tonight as he's going to come out. And the race has obviously not been called yet. What he's going to say when he gets on stage after seeing the numbers that are better than even they were expecting this morning.
Yeah, and we know that their team had not spent a lot of time coming up with any drafts for him. They were going to let Donald Trump speak off the cuff, but they were trying to come up with scenarios in which Donald Trump would not come out early. The difference between now and 2020 is that their internal polling was showing them a lot of these kind of numbers. Maybe not exactly, obviously, as you said, they were even surprised by how generous some of the numbers were, but they did believe they had a real path towards winning, unlike in 2020 when that seemed a lot more uncertain, which meant that Donald Trump went into this in a very different way. So the speech that he gave, obviously, in 2020, declaring victory when he did not win the election, we'll see what he says tonight, because we know that, again, he was in a very different place. The election is in a very different place than when he came out then.
Also, the access of influence around him is so different. Like 4 years ago, Rudy Giuliani was in the White House, intoxicated, according to testimony from other aides who were there, urging Trump to go out and declare victory. He's now down the riser from us this evening. He was not at the Mar-a-Lago event, but Donald Trump was surrounded by Elon Musk, we know, was at Mar-a-Lago tonight. There were photos of him sitting with Donald Trump as he was preparing to come over here. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is there as well, Dana White, Tucker Carlson, Donald Trump Jr., obviously Senator J.D. Vance, and those who are now, around him that has changed, including his own campaign managers, Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita.
Yeah, and one of the most interesting things about Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita is they've really managed at times to keep him at bay and protect him from his own instincts. Obviously, not all the time. Donald Trump can say and do whatever he wants, and he often does. However, for example, one of the things we saw just over the weekend when he was in Pennsylvania speaking and making incredibly inappropriate and insulting comments was Susie Wiles go stand at the buffer and stare at him. Now, we heard from the campaign that they were saying, oh, he was just trying to wrap him because he was going too long, but there's obviously a lot of questions as to whether or not it was because of timing or because of the fact that everybody knew what he was saying could potentially cost him an election that was such narrow margins. I mean, there was a lot of uproar, even from his allies, calling him afterwards on that, and that is something that Susie Wiles was very aware of. So his orbit has changed in terms of the people he is surrounding himself with, people who try to essentially stop him from his own instincts.
Yeah, and also, I think as they're looking at today and surprise themselves by how the numbers have gone, and some places, obviously they thought North Carolina and Georgia would be a gut check. Kristen Holmes will stay with you. Jake, back to you.
We have a major projection. CNN projects that Donald Trump will win the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This is a huge, huge achievement for Donald Trump and a huge bucket of electoral votes, 19 of them, for his path back to the presidency. As of right now, with those 19 electoral votes added from Pennsylvania, Donald Trump is within spitting distance of 270 electoral votes. He has 265 electoral votes. Vice President Kamala Harris has 187 electoral votes. 270 are needed to win. John King, Donald Trump is within a hair's breadth of being reelected president.
Yes, he is. And let's just walk over. We'll look at where we are now, 265 to 180. He's leading here. He's leading here. He could get a congressional vote there. There's another one at Maine he could possibly get. But if you just look out here, he is almost certain to get this. The state of Alaska hasn't voted Democrat forever. That would get him to 268. So you're at the point right now, Jake, where pick it, right? Just pick it. There's be one congressional. He could possibly win both in Nebraska. That would get him to 270, assuming he wins Alaska, which I think is a pretty safe bet. Then you just look at the map, right? Unlikely to get any of these over here. He could possibly get an electoral vote out of Maine, but he's leading here, leading here, leading here, and leading there, and he needs two. He needs two. So if he gets that one and that one, he's way up. And if he keeps holding these, then now that's where he was. When he won, he was at 304, 306. That would be 310. 310 if he sweeps. There's no guarantee he's going to sweep by any means, but he's leading in enough states right now. Plus, there's a couple other congressional districts on the board where he could pass. He could, emphasis on could, pass 310 electoral votes. You come back to where we are now, though. He's just in a commanding position, let's do the math the other way, okay? Which is what gets interesting, right? This is now red in our count. There we go. That gets Donald Trump there. Here's the challenge when you do the math the other way. You assume that stays for the Republican. Let's just, for the sake of argument, big comeback for the Democrat. Big comeback for the Democrat. Democrat holds New Mexico, holds Minnesota. Excuse me for that one. Wins Wisconsin. Wins Michigan. You see this count? See this count? It's New Jersey. There's Connecticut. There's New Hampshire. Pop it out. What do you want to pick? You want to go state? Well, you could even go statewide. It's not going to happen, but let's say statewide. All right, you do all the Maine. You come back out. What does that get you? All right, so it comes down to this: if she wins everything. If she wins everything. The Pennsylvania is what makes Donald Trump. Again, we're not done until we're done, but Pennsylvania, in every path she had, any reasonable, plausible path to 270, included the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for the Vice President of the United States. So you get to a place now where as you come back over here, you're just looking at this map and you're saying, is she going to win Alaska? No one's going to Vegas on that one. So where is she in any of these? Do you start coming back? Is there any way to come back? 73% of the vote. It's 266,000 votes. Again, let's just look at the live outstanding vote. Let me move this up so you can see it better. Yes, the outstanding vote in Michigan is disproportionately Democratic, but there are a fair amount. See those big red circles? Fair amount of Republican votes out there. We have a 266,000 vote lead and a map that looks like that of what votes out. Again, I don't do impossibles, but I do improbables, and that's improbable. You come over here to Wisconsin. Again, 119,000 votes ahead. That's come down a little tiny bit. It has. But it's a state won by 22,000 votes in the last two elections, and Donald Trump is ahead at the moment by 119,000 votes. And so, again, you're looking at what's left. You're at 92%. Sure, the biggest is here, but look at those. Those are modest circles for Republican votes as well. Essentially, in chess, she's blocked. Donald Trump's not across the line yet because we have more states to go through, but she is essentially blocked from getting to 270.
All right, stand by for a projection because CNN can now project that Kamala Harris will get that one electoral vote from Omaha. Nebraska gives its electoral votes. According to congressional district, Kamala Harris will get one of them. Donald Trump will get another one of them. Of the five, let's look at the electoral map. Donald Trump now has 266 electoral votes because we just gave him one from Nebraska's, I think, first congressional district. Kamala Harris has 188 because we just gave her one from Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. 270 are needed to win. Donald Trump needs only 4 more electoral votes in order to be the president. Dana?
I mean, Pennsylvania, if you look at those numbers, 266, 266, 4 more. And you just saw the math that John did, the path that the different paths that he put out there for Donald Trump and that for Kamala Harris. And
I'm so
again,
proud.
we're not.
I mean, that map of where she did not perform, the like completely grayed out map where she never overperformed Biden to than 3%. That's just rough.
I think there are 2 stories here. One is the burden that she faced, and to go back to the very beginning of the night when we did the right track, wrong track. 26% of the country thinks that the nation is in the right track. 72% think they're in the wrong track. And when it came to the performance of Joe Biden, it was 41% to approve to 58% disapprove. So she had an enormous burden. And you know, people are unhappy with the way the Biden-Harris administration has run this country for the last 4 years, and she did not succeed. I'm not sure it was possible for her to succeed in somehow positioning herself as an agent of change and distancing herself from Biden. There's another part of the story, though, we got to talk about, which is Donald Trump. The fact is that when you go back to January 6th of 2021 to today, it is an extraordinary comeback. He was a pariah when he left town on January 20th, refused to even go to the inauguration. There was the vast majority of members of his own party wouldn't be seen with him. He, you know, over the course of the 4 years, he proceeds to win himself back into the party, declares right after the tremendous defeat of the Republicans. There was certainly an unsuccessful showing in the midterms in 2022, wins a contested primary, and you know, this is his party. This is these voters.
It's not just his party.
What?
It's not just his party now, and that's
no, it's his country.
I mean, we have to be careful. We haven't called it yet, but Pennsylvania makes it extremely tough for Kamala Harris, and that's one of the things. I mean, the Trump side of this, one of the most extraordinary dynamics that we didn't necessarily see coming was that there still was a hidden Trump vote. Everybody who, even those who are big supporters of Donald Trump, would tell me, well, now they're loud and proud. People who are MAGA are very open about it, and so on and so forth. Except if you look at just these exit polls across these states and then nationally, there are so many pockets of formerly Democratic sort of coalition voters who have moved in an extraordinary way. I mean, Latino men, an 18-point swing for Donald Trump. He got 18 percentage points more among Latino men than he did in 2020.
Also, the campaign made this concerted effort to go after the never Trump vote, being out there campaigning alongside Liz Cheney, talking about having Republicans in the cabinet. It seems like that did not move people, that is still, in some ways, the never Trump community is kind of a homeless community, and it didn't help Democrats in this conversation in really any of these states. You don't get the sense that there was this vast, as you said, hidden vote that somehow pollsters missed or that people voted in secret. That kind of conversation, it just looks like it didn't pan out.
The fact is that the Trump campaign identified what the majority of Americans, and it appears that for the first time he is going to win the popular vote in addition to the electoral vote, what they cared about. That what they cared about is the fact that a box of cereal costs $9, that with Southern Republican governors shipping illegal immigrants north, that the whole migration issue has become a national issue, that you feel it in New York and Illinois and a bunch of northern states. The transgender issue was you know, this version of the cultural wars. And you know, people were surprised at the fact that he spent more money
on the transgender issue than he did on the economy or immigration in terms of advertising, and it obviously seems to have worked like gangbusters. So he really identified what the concerns of the majority of Americans was, and he played to it, and she faced this overwhelming burden that people just didn't like the direction of the country as it stood now after 4 years of Biden and Harris.
Yeah, well, and the big term of 2024, Anderson, is the manosphere. And we're all living in the manosphere now.
Dana, let's talk about some of, mistakes that were made, things that weren't looked at, or, obviously there's going to be a lot of finger pointing, there's going to be a lot of navel gazing. What stands out to you?
Listen, I'm still convinced that Kamala Harris performed better than Joe Biden would have tonight. I just think that there were so many of us, even those of us who didn't like Donald Trump, who after the debate performance couldn't in good conscience vote for Joe Biden for 4 more years. But there were tremendous headwinds here. I think there was a misreading, and I'm guilty of this to some degree, of a lot of people don't like Donald Trump, the man, but they felt better when he was in office. That's just the fact. It's the border. It's feelings around crime, feelings around the economy. And I think there was this very powerful ad, the Republican Jewish Coalition, that was all over the airwaves. Yeah. A bunch of women sitting around, Jewish women, just saying, I can't stand him, but I felt like we were supporting Israel and we were stronger and we were tougher. And I think that resonates with people.
Yeah. Look, I don't want to engage in an autopsy prematurely, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion, not just about what happened in this campaign, but about when parties lose, it's an occasion for evaluation. And I think the evaluation is necessary.
Do you think the Democratic Party will do that?
I think I think it will do that, and it should do that. And as I was saying to you guys before, I appreciate the Democratic Party because I think it believes in the use of institutions to help lift people up, and that we're a better country when you do. But the Democratic Party has become more of a suburban, college-educated, professional party, and it still feels allegiance to working people, and it still tries to fight for working people, but it approaches working people like missionaries, like Margaret Mead would approach the natives, and they come and the Democrats say, we want to help you become more like us. And the implication is that somehow if you work with your hands or work with your back, that you're less than. And these are the people who make our country go. And they deserve respect and dignity. Everybody deserves that. I think Kamala Harris tried to express that in this campaign, but it has to be more of an exercise over 90 days of a campaign. It has to be a really rethinking. We talk about, you talked, Van, about solar panels and so on. I don't even understand how people can question that we need to do something about climate change, given the catastrophes that are besetting us now. That said, if you make your living extracting fossil fuels and old energy from the ground, and you make a good middle class living that way, and you have to give that job, and people come to you and say, for the good of humanity, you're going to have to give up your good middle class job. That obviously doesn't sit well, and there needs to be an honest discussion about that. I think the Democratic Party has to do that. But let me just say one other thing, because I pushed one of your hot buttons there.
Don't worry.
Kamala Harris.
Me too.
Kamala, there'll be plenty of critiques and so on. Kamala Harris completely overperformed expectations. I think she handled herself with a lot of grace. I think she did. She probably turned in one of the great debate performances.
Include the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So, yes, she needs to win all blue wall states to get there. That would get her there on its own as long as she wins Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. But there's no way to get there without Pennsylvania, which is why that is absolutely critical that she win there. I just want to show you what I mean. Let's assume that she came back and won Michigan. She's trailing now. Let's assume she came back and won Wisconsin. She's trailing now.
People campaigned on mass deportations. So this
what
is
I'm saying
what
is
this
he could
vote
do.
was for.
That's what I'm saying. My point is, whatever Donald Trump wants, if they have the Senate now, if they get the White House and if they get the House, if they keep the House, whatever Donald Trump wants will become law. There will not be the backstop of the Senate controlled by Democrats.
Did not want the backstop. This is what I'm trying to say. We may be looking at a map of voters who weren't looking to give him a backstop.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Not to get too sort of dorky here, but I think it is still possible, if he is president, that some big pieces of legislation could be stopped in the United States Senate, because legislation at this point still needs 60 votes. But it is the cabinet who he's going to have in his, not just in and around his administration, but again, the bench. That is all regular majority.
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about it, because the Supreme Court they ruled on the Chevron deference and basically said executive agencies can't have the untrammeled authority to do what they want. It has to be passed by Congress. And you could end up with the Democratic minority. I mean, again, all of this is somewhat speculative. Democratic minority in the Senate being able to block legislation, and the Trump agencies not able to enact it on their own.
Yep. Just one of many things that we would be talking about if Donald Trump does, in fact, win. We're not there yet. Jake, over to you.
Thanks, Dana. Let's bring you back to the key race alert and where we stand with the battleground states that we have not called yet. Pennsylvania, Donald Trump in the lead, 51.1% to Kamala Harris's 47.8%. Donald Trump has an almost 220,000 vote lead. That's with 93% of the estimated vote in from the great Keystone State. Michigan, Donald Trump up 52.4% to Harris's 45.8%. Donald Trump with a more than 244,000 vote lead in Michigan, with 66% of the estimated vote in. In Wisconsin, Donald Trump 51.2%, Harris 47.1%. Donald Trump with a more than 120,000 vote lead, with an estimated 89% of the vote in from the Badger State of Wisconsin. Arizona, Donald Trump in the lead, 50% to Harris's 49.1%. Donald Trump has a 16,000 plus vote lead, with an estimated 53% of the vote in from Arizona. In Nevada, Donald Trump in the lead there, 51% to Kamala Harris's 47.4%. Donald Trump with a more than 37,000 vote lead, with 70% of the estimated vote in from Nevada. John King.
You're looking at the map and we're just trying to see. The only question really now is, well, the first question is, can the vice president win Pennsylvania? If she does not, Donald Trump is the next president of the United States. And then from there, if she wins Pennsylvania, Donald Trump still has other paths to 270. So for the vice president, your priority is here. And you'll notice all three of those states are red. That's the so-called blue wall. The blue wall is ruby red at the moment, not done counting the votes.
We know how Fox News has already called it for Donald Trump. We are still waiting for that official announcement, because we know as it stands, it's right now 266 and 188, and just 4 short of victory there for Donald Trump. That's how the numbers look like. Kamala Harris has the campaign gone all wrong for the Democrats, because we do know how the swing states, especially the blue wall states, haven't voted in favor of Kamala Harris. In fact, Pennsylvania is the biggest state that Kamala Harris has also lost. That's a victory there for Donald Trump, and that really speaks volumes, because it's 19 electoral votes coming from Pennsylvania alone. And that also is a huge margin of victory for Donald Trump over there. CNN's projection talks about how he's already got 266 as opposed to 188 for Harris. Just 4 short of the magic number of 270, but he's way beyond the halfway mark. There you have Donald Trump.
Thank you very much. Wow. Well, I want to thank you all very much. This is great. These are our friends. We have thousands of friends on this incredible movement. This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before. And frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. And now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly. We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country. And we made history for a reason tonight, and the reason is going to be just that. We overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, and it is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy? But it's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president. And every citizen, I will fight for you, for your family, and your future. Every single day, I will be fighting for you, and with every breath in my body, I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve. This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again. And in addition to having won the battleground states of North Carolina, I love these places, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, we are now winning in Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, and Alaska, which would result in us carrying at least 315 electoral votes. But it's much easier doing what the networks did or whoever called it, because there was no other path. There was no other path to victory. We also have won the popular vote. That was great. Very proud of that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And, winning the popular vote was very nice, I will tell you. It's a great feeling of love. We have a great feeling of love in this very large room with unbelievable people standing by my side. These people have been incredible. They've made the journey with me, and we're going to make you very happy. We're going to make you very proud of your vote. I hope that you're going to be looking back someday and say that was one of the truly important moments of my life when I voted for this group of people beyond the president, this group of great people. America has given us an unprecedented and powerful mandate. We have taken back control of the Senate. Wow, that's good. And the Senate races in Montana, Nevada, Texas, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, were all won by the MAGA movement. They helped so much. And in those cases, every one of them, we worked with the senators. They were tough races. And I mean, the number of victories in the Senate was absolutely incredible. And we did tele-rallies. We did tele-rallies with each one of them. And sometimes we did 2 or 3 and it was amazing to look at all of those victories. Nobody expected that, nobody. So I just wanted to thank you very much for that. And you have some great senators and some great new senators. And it also looks like we'll be keeping control of the House of Representatives. And I want to thank Mike Johnson. I think he's doing a terrific job. Terrific job. I want to also thank my beautiful wife, Melania, First Lady. Who has the #1 best-selling book in the country. Can you believe that? Oh, no, she's done a great job, works very hard to help people. So I just want to thank her. But I want to thank my whole family, my amazing children, and they are amazing children. Now, we all think our children are amazing. Everybody here thinks their children are amazing, but that's a good thing when you think they are. But Don, Eric, Ivanka, Tiffany, Barron, Laura, Jared, Kimberly, Michael, thank you all. What a help. What a great. My father-in-law, Victor, is tremendous, and we miss very much Melania's mother, Amalia. We miss Amalia, don't we, huh? She would be very happy right now, standing on this stage. She'd be so proud. She was a great woman, that one. Beautiful inside and out. She was a great woman. I want to be the first to congratulate our great, now I can say, Vice President-elect of the United States, J.D. Vance. And his absolutely remarkable and beautiful wife, Usha Vance. And he is a feisty guy, isn't he? You know, I've said, go into the enemy camp, and you know the enemy camp is certain networks, and a lot of people don't like to, sir, do I have to do that? He just goes, okay. Which one? CNN, MSDNC? He'll say, all right, thank you very much. He actually looks fun. He's still like the only guy I've ever seen. He really looks forward to it, and then he just goes in and absolutely obliterates them. Say a couple of words.
Wild. Well, Mr. President, I appreciate you allowing me to join you on this incredible journey. I thank you for the trust that you placed in me. And I think that we just witnessed the greatest political comeback in the history of the United States of America. And under President Trump's leadership, we're never going to stop fighting for you, for your dreams, for the future of your children. And after the greatest political comeback in American history, we're going to lead the greatest economic comeback in American history under Donald Trump's leadership.
Thank you very much. He's turned out to be a good choice. I took a little heat at the beginning, but he was, I knew the brain was a good one, about as good as it gets. And we love the family, and we're going to have a great 4 years, and we're going to turn our country around, make it something very special. It lost that little that little thing called special, we have to make it so. We're going to make this so great. It's the greatest country and potentially the greatest country in the world by far. And right now, we're going to just work very hard to get all of that back. We're going to make it the best it's ever been. We can do that. If we had to wait longer, I don't know. It was going bad, and it was going bad fast. We're going to have to seal up those borders, and we're going to have to let people come into our country. We want people to come back in, but we have to let them come back in, but they have to come in legally. They have to come in legally. Let me also express my tremendous appreciation for Susie and Chris, the job you did. Susie, come here. Come here, Susie. Chris, come here, Chris. Susie likes to stay sort of in the back, let me tell you. The Ice Maiden, we call her the Ice Maiden. Come here, Chris. Come here, Chris. Susie likes to stay in the background. She's not in the background. Come here,
This wasn't expected, but I just want to thank, obviously, President Trump for this journey. It was a great one, and he's a hell of a candidate, and he's going to be a hell of a great 47th president. And this team that we had, the best team, and, of course, even my boss, Susie Wiles, the best. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Susie. Look at her, she's shy. I've never seen her be shy before. Susie. They're great. Everybody up here is great. Everybody up here is very special. But the Trump, who did you say? Oh, let me tell you, we have a new star. A star is born, Elon. Now he is. Now he's an amazing guy. We were sitting together tonight. You know, he spent 2 weeks in Philadelphia and different parts of Pennsylvania, campaigning. You know, he sent the rocket up 2 weeks ago, and I saw that rocket, and I saw it coming down. I saw it. It was, when it left, it was beautiful, shiny white. When it came down, it didn't look so pretty. It was going 10,000 miles an hour, and it was burning like hell. I said, what happened to your paint job? He said, we've never made a paint that could withstand that kind of heat. And, but I saw it come down and turn around. And it was, you know, it's like 22 stories tall, by the way. It looks a little smaller than that, but it's big. And it came down, and you saw that fire burning. And I'm saying, only Elon can do this. It must be an Elon. And I tell the story. I told it last night. I had a man on the phone. I had the screen muted, no sound. And that very important guy, one of the most important people in, I would say, the country, actually. But, you know, I was president, and now it looks like I was going to be maybe president again, so I figured I could ask him to hold. So I asked him to hold. And especially because you're going to be president again, they hold. So I took the phone down, and I'm looking at the screen. I'm seeing this crazy thing that's going around and coming down. It looks like it's going to crash into the gantry. And I said, oh, no. And I said, do me a favor, do you mind holding for a couple of minutes? I want to see this. I thought it was a space-age movie or something. I put the phone down. Bad part, I didn't pick it up for 45 minutes, and he was holding. But this spaceship came down, and I saw those engines firing, and it looked like it was over. It was going to smash. And then I saw the fire pour out from the left side, and I put it straight. And it came down so gently, and then it wrapped those arms around it, and it held it. And just like you hold your baby at night, your little baby. And it was a beautiful thing to see. And I called Elon. I said, Elon, was that you? He said, yes, it was. I said, who else can do that? Can Russia do it? No. Can China do it? No. Can the United States do it other than you? No, nobody can do that. I said, that's why I love you, Elon. That's great. And you know, when we had the tragic Hurricane Helene, and it hit North Carolina, they were really devastated, the water. This was a big water, as big as we've ever seen, water hurricane. It built lakes out of nothing. Fields became lakes, and And the danger was unbelievable. And the people from North Carolina came to me and they said, would it be possible, at all possible, for you to speak to Elon Musk? We need Starlink. I said, what's Starlink? It's a form of communication. So I called Elon, and I'll tell you what, he had, and it was very dangerous. People would die. They had no communication. All the wires were down. I called Elon Musk. I said, Elon, you have something called Starlink. Is that right? Yes, I do. What the hell is it? He said, it's a communication system that's very good. I said, Elon, they need it really, really badly in North Carolina. Can you get it? He had that there so fast. It was incredible. So, and it was great. It saved a lot of lives. He saved a lot of lives. But he's a character. He's a special guy. He's a super genius. We have to protect our geniuses. We don't have that many of them. We have to protect our super geniuses. I want to thank some of the guys. You know, we have up here today the U.S. Open champion. He's a fantastic golfer. He's slightly longer than me. Hits the ball a little bit longer than me. Just a little bit. Bryson DeChambeau is up here someplace. What happened to Bryson? Where is he? Bryson. Oh, he was shot. He's hitting balls. Oh, he's on the way. He's hitting balls. Bryson. Oh, look at him. He's got a great career going. Great U.S. Open, Bryson. That's a fantastic job. And we also have a man, Dana White, who has done some job. He's a tough guy. So Dana started UFC and came to me, do you mind if I use your, nobody wanted to give him a rinse because they said it's a rough sport, a little rough. And I helped him out a little bit, and I went, and they said, this is the roughest sport I've ever seen, but I began to like it, and he loved it, and nobody's done a better job in sports. And you know, he's a very motivational kind of a guy, what he does. He gets these fighters, and they really go at it, and it's become one of the most successful sports enterprises anywhere at any time. It's doing so well. I'd like to ask Dana just to say a couple of words, because people love to hear from him. Dana,
please. Nobody deserves this more than him, and nobody deserves this more than his family does. This is what happens when the machine comes after you. What you've seen over the last several years, this is what it looks like. Couldn't stop him. He keeps going forward. He doesn't quit. He's the most resilient, hard-working man I've ever met in my life. His family are incredible people. This is karma, ladies and gentlemen. He deserves this. They deserve it as a family. I want to thank some people real quick. I want to thank the Nelk boys, Aiden Ross, Theo Vaughn, Bussin' with the boys, and last but not least, the mighty and powerful Joe Rogan. And thank you, America. Thank you. Have a good night.
that is a piece of work. No, he's really an amazing guy. But most of all, I want to thank the millions of hardworking Americans across the nation who have always been the heart and soul of this really great movement. We've been through so much together, and today you showed up in record numbers to deliver a victory like probably like no other. This was something special, and we're gonna pay you back. We're gonna do the best job. We're gonna turn it around. It's got to be turned around. It's got to be turned around fast, and we're gonna turn it around. We're gonna do it in every way, with so many ways, but we're gonna do it in every way. This will forever be remembered as the day the American people regained control of their country. So I just want to say that on behalf of this great group of people, these are hard-working people. These are fantastic people, and we can add a few names like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He came in. And he's going to help make America healthy again. Now, he's a great guy, and he really means it. He wants to do some things, and we're going to let him go to it. I just said, but, Bobby, leave the oil to me. We have more liquid gold, oil and gas. We have more liquid gold than any country in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. We have more than Russia. Bobby, stay away from the liquid gold. Other than that, go have a good time, Bobby. We're going to be paying down debt. We're going to be reducing taxes. We can do things that nobody else can do. Nobody else is going to be able to do it. China doesn't have what we have. Nobody has what we have. But we have the greatest people also. Maybe that's the most important thing. This campaign has been so historic in so many ways. We've built the biggest, the broadest, the most unified coalition. They've never seen anything like it in all of American history. They've never seen it. Young and old, men and women, rural and urban. And we had them all helping us tonight, when you think. I mean, I was looking at it. I was watching it. They had some great analysis of the people that voted for us. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. They came from all corners, union, non-union, African-American, Hispanic-American, Asian-American, Arab-American, Muslim-American. We had everybody, and it was beautiful. It was a historic realignment, uniting citizens of all backgrounds around a common core of common sense. You know, we're the party of common sense. We want to have borders. We want to have security. We want to have things be good, safe. We want great education. We want a strong and powerful military, and ideally we don't have to use it. You know, we had no wars. 4 years we had no wars, except we defeated ISIS. We defeated ISIS in record time. But we had no wars. They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. But this is also a massive victory for democracy and for freedom. Together, we're going to unlock America's glorious destiny. We're going to achieve the most incredible future for our people. Yesterday, as I stood at my last stop on the campaign trail, I'll never be doing a rally again. Can you believe it? I think we've done 900 rallies approximately from them. Can you imagine? 901, something, a lot of rallies. And it was sad. Everybody was sad. Many people, I said, this is our last rally. But now we're going on to something that's far more important, because the rallies were used for us to be put in this position where we can really help our country. That's what we're going to do. We're going to make our country better than it ever has been. And I said that many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together. We're going to fulfill that mission. The task before us will not be easy, but I will bring every ounce of energy, spirit, and fight that I have in my soul to the job that you've entrusted to me. This is a great job. There's no job like this. This is the most important job in the world. Just as I did in my first term, we had a great first term, a great, great first term. I will govern by a simple motto: promises made, promises kept. We're going to keep our promises. Nothing will stop me from keeping my word to you, the people. We will make America safe, strong, prosperous, powerful, and free again. And I'm asking every citizen all across our land to join me in this noble and righteous endeavor. That's what it is. It's time to put the divisions of the past 4 years behind us. It's time to unite. And we're going to try, we have to try, and it's going to happen. Success will bring us together. I've seen that. I saw that in the first term. When we became more and more successful, people started coming together. Success is going to bring us together, and we are going to start by all putting America first. We have to put our country first for at least a period of time. We have to fix it. Because together we can truly make America great again for all Americans. So I want to just tell you what a great honor this is. I want to thank you. I will not let you down. America's future will be bigger, better, bolder, richer, safer, and stronger than it has ever been before. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Vote, which tells you that this is an overwhelming landslide in favor of Donald Trump, and that perhaps the divisions in American society that were supposed to be roughly 50-50, if you went by the exit polls, aren't quite pronounced. In fact, viewers, a number of minorities, especially Latino men, have voted by a 16% greater margin than they have ever done before for Donald Trump. He is also leading in 7 of the 7 swing states. And that is an absolutely stellar statistic, because it tells you just how off base the exit polls as well as the opinion polls were once again in another major election in a major democracy. In India, they were completely off the mark. This was not supposed to be the result. We were, in fact, in for the long haul. We were being told that for about 2 days there might be no clarity on the outcome, because this election is going to go down to the wire and every vote will have to be counted meticulously to determine who actually won. But that is not what has quite happened. It hasn't turned out that way. Many people, viewers, are already talking up this election as a victory for one nation conservatism, a kind of outlook that we are familiar with here in India under Prime Minister Modi. President Trump describes this as a victory as he would for the MAGA movement, viewers, and he also credits in large parts his choice of running mate. J.D. Vance, who wrote, of course, the Hillbilly Elegies a few years ago, which also was turned into a major motion picture that talked really about the issues that Trump built his campaign on over the last 8 to 10 years. Those are pictures still of some elements of the Trump campaign. Those viewers are obviously of the first family now as we see it. The president extremely complimentary of his wife and of his family, who said have gone through hell and back in the last 8 years, have been ripped apart by the establishment. That was the only time, viewers, when Mr. Trump sounded a little critical of those he thought were thwarting his attempt at winning office. Otherwise, his message was without rancor. He stressed on unity. He also said that the time has come to let the divisions of the past behind and unite to make America great again. He believes that his work is cut out, and he's already outlined in his campaign what his emphasis is going to be. He reiterated that in his speech. Let me go across to Washington, D.C. and Sanjay Suri. Of course, Sanjay Suri, thank you very much for joining us from Washington, D.C. It's very late into the night, but obviously that was expected. What wasn't expected was the clarity of the mandate. Over to you.
Well, quite right. All the polls have been telling us that it's been on knife edge, and they're right in a limited sense that in the results we're getting in the swing states, we are seeing that the Republicans are leading in all of them. They have Pennsylvania, the critical one, and that's the one that absolutely delivers the presidency to whoever wins it. And this is just past 50% in the swing states. But uniformly, they're going the Republican way or have gone the Republican way, and there is no division within these swing states. So the knife edge didn't quite turn out to be the knife edge. Also, consider that, and I was in Pennsylvania, it really went all out. They had thousands of people knocking on doors, but clearly knocking on doors does not, for that reason, deliver a vote. The vote was delivered, and it did not go the Democrat way. So clearly, we are seeing a result that has been along expected lines, of course, in the non-swings states, so to speak. But in the others that were expected to be a very, very close finish, we are seeing a close finish, but also a clear finish. The clear advantage now is in the direction of the Republicans, and so we have the election called, and we've heard from Trump.
Yeah, at least one of two houses is now delivered also to the Republicans. That's important. The Senate, the Republicans get a majority in the Senate, and that changes a lot of things. Of course, lots of decisions will be made which will impact the way U.S. politics is structured, U.S. governance is structured, the Supreme Court, and of course nominations to key posts. Now, Sanjay Suri, before we get into all of that, I just want you to explain to us, how is it that this victory came together in the manner that it has come together? Because most people did not assume that Trump would carry the popular vote. He hadn't done so against Clinton, he didn't do so against Biden, but here he seems to be carrying the popular vote, which suggests that there is a larger constituency out there, maybe even a growing one for the Democratic candidate here, and who is now, of course, the 47th President of the United States. Sanjay Suri.
You know, there are certain blocks that were perhaps expected to vote en masse for Trump. That didn't quite happen. The one issue that we heard more than any other by way of a vote block was the women vote, the gender vote. It was considered that the women are going to be solidly behind Kamala Harris, and that is the men who are going to be for Trump. That clearly was always an oversimplification, but an oversimplification of what people thought was a discernible trend. Again, to an extent, we have seen that, but extraordinarily, the number of votes among women voters, according to trends so far, according to the numbers we have so far, is still more for Harris, but critically, less than the number of women who voted for Joe Biden and the Democrats under him. I believe the number that is being suggested is that 57% of women voted for the Democrats under Biden. 53% now have voted for the Democrats under Harris. And this is when gender really has been made the prime issue. The Roe v. Wade case has been much spoken about. Abortion rights have been much spoken about. So the women vote has not quite delivered for Harris to the extent anticipated, to the extent certainly claimed, and relative even to the last election in 2020. Now that certainly is contrary to the popular belief. Also, we do know that there are a number of males who have delivered their vote for the Republicans, and that includes a very sizable number also among the minorities. Again, it was not the case that the overwhelming minority vote will go the Democrat way, which it traditionally has done. So there were certain assumptions made, certain predictions made by the pundits, and these have turned out to be a little bit off the point and certainly off the results that we've seen.
Well, I'm sure the Harris campaign is going to introspect. We're going to cut back across to CNN now to get an insight into how they're interpreting the Trump speech there.
Because they believe she is somebody who can keep him at least somewhat in line. Again, it's former President Donald Trump. We know that he is not somebody who family, and she has largely stayed out of light. Now, after his conviction, as we talked about, she was up at Trump Tower. She never came down with him. Even when he spoke, she wasn't there. She was never seen publicly with him. And there was a lot of questions about that. You know, even he brought up on the campaign trail in the last 2 days how she was there on the campaign trail with him back in 2016 and 2020. Yeah. And she had largely disappeared. It was notable that she was there today. And I was speaking to somebody earlier before the Mar-a-Lago event who said they weren't even sure she was going to show up to that Mar-a-Lago watch party. Now, obviously, everything started shifting when they started seeing those numbers coming in. But she has really taken a back seat here, and it was interesting to see her on the stage.
Yeah. And Jake, obviously a moment there that J.D. Vance and Donald Trump himself summed up. J.D. Vance calling it, as he put it, the greatest political comeback ever. And Donald Trump saying that he believed that they are seeing the results that we're looking at now for a reason. Obviously, the question is what that means and what's to come.
Caitlin, thanks so much. And Anderson, it is hard to think of a political comeback that is actually more significant than this one. I'm tempted to say Richard Nixon, but that really falls short of what Donald Trump has achieved.
Yeah, I mean, winning not just the electoral votes, but the popular vote as well. Let's continue the discussion about just what this means, and obviously Democrats are going to be looking at this very closely about what it was why they didn't deliver.
Yeah, and we talked a bit about that. We should, we heard a discussion about what it was. We should talk about what it wasn't. It may have been a mandate for some of the policies around economy and immigration. There'll be battles over some aspects of that and the wisdom of some of it. But certainly he should feel like he's been affirmed on that. It wasn't a mandate to wantonly use the power of the presidency to punish his political enemies. It wasn't a mandate to help enrich himself and his friends. It wasn't a mandate to single out groups in our society for scorn or worse. I'd love to hear from Van on this, but let's be honest about this, okay? Let's be absolutely blunt about it. There were appeals to racism in this campaign, and there is racial bias in this country, and there is sexism in this country, and anybody who thinks that did not in any way impact on the outcome of this race is wrong. I'm not saying that was the main reason that Kamala Harris lost and Donald Trump won. And I think they ran honestly, strategically, his campaign, and I've said it many times, they ran a very smart campaign. It was an ultimately rational, well-conceived, and well-executed campaign for an often irrational candidate, and they overcame him to sell his message, or the message that they thought he should be selling to the country. But let's not confuse what this was and what it wasn't. Let's be very clear-eyed about it.
I think it's going to be a long time for us to figure out what it was and what it wasn't. I hope that it goes the way that you said. But like I do think it's bitter in the mouth, the racial and gender dimension of this. And the only way that you can kind of begin to see it, if you don't see it right away, is, can you imagine a woman of color acting like Donald Trump acted, even for one day? The kinds of stuff that he said, the kinds of things that he did, the way that he would insult people. If you're a person of color, you don't feel you have that freedom. You feel like you really are somewhat constrained. You're always running something in the back of your mind like, how am I going to be perceived? And also, if I say this, will they think that all black people are this way or all women are this way? So there's a license that he had to just be a fool, just to be an obnoxious ass to everyone. And for people to go, well, he can still be president. There's nobody who doesn't have that phenotype that feels that free. And so I do think that what I'm hearing from people is, what do we have to do to be acceptable? I'm hearing from women of color, like, from people see things very, very differently. I just want to make sure people, like, Kamala Harris, look, she's not Oprah or Beyonce. She's not like some untouchable black woman in the popular, but she is a respectable woman, and she's somebody who served in all three branches. She served in the courts, she served in the legislature, she served in the executive branch, she served local, state, federal. She should have been qualified enough to be able to not have this sort of an outcome. And so, just give me a second now. And so then I think what happened last time when Trump won, everybody ran to the economic argument. The Tea Party was just people, they had economic anxiety, that's all it was. But the people with the most economic anxiety were black and brown people who at that time did not join the Tea Party. So I just don't want to take out that many things can be true at the same time.
I would just say this. Maybe you got a bad messenger and a bad message. Kamala Harris has never run an election in a state that wasn't 100% Democratic. She's been elected in the state of California her entire career. She's run as a prosecutor, she ran for AG, she ran for Senate in a blue state. So she's never had to build a coalition, she's never had to really campaign. When she ran for president the first time on her own, she tanked. She didn't get anywhere. And then so when this came about, this opportunity came about, she didn't run again. She's never been battle tested. And actually, you've said this before, running for president is a skill. Like Barack Obama wasn't good at it when he started. Right. There was no racism at it. Barack Obama got good at it. You helped him get good at it, right? And so maybe she's just a bad messenger, selling a bad product.
No, I mean, look, I think, again,
You don't think there's any validity to that?
No, I think that there are plenty of ways to critique her as a candidate. I think there'll be time to do that. I think the fundamental point, and it's been made again and again and again tonight, no one, I don't care how good a candidate you were, it's very hard when there's a 28% right track number in this country, when people have 2/3 of the country think the economy is bad, regardless of whether it is, or,
No, again, I'm saying not just messenger, I'm saying the message as well.
But no, but that is all true, but that doesn't obviate the fact that there were some people who probably voted against her. We've never had a woman president, that there's sexism in this country. There are people who probably voted against her because there may be some people there are clearly people who voted for her because of
Barack and Michelle Obama are some of the most admired people in America.
Let me just say, though, I wonder, I worry that...
Trust me, there were plenty of people who weren't terribly happy about having him as president.
Today, if you look at the numbers,
please stop.
No, but I think that the wrong takeaway from this would be that by running toward the center and away from some of her 2019 positions, that was a mistake, and that she should have doubled down on ultra-leftism and tried to play to the progressive base. I think this is a sweeping indictment of a progressive left that has gone so far that it alienates so much of the center of this country. There's a rural-urban divide, but there's a cultural divide where people feel left behind where part of the Democratic Party is going. And I do think she was right to moderate. That's what she should have done. but she had a 3-month basically window to do that. She's somebody who was not battle tested, and she was wearing the brunt of Joe Biden in her own positions in 2019. That was a terrible position to be in.
Donald Trump on the brink of a stunning victory. Votes still coming in. We're also tracking the fight for the control of the House. A lot more ahead.
Well, viewers, some analysis coming through from that CNN feed. We'll, of course, connect right back to it. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back. Stay with us for this rolling coverage.
The math that John did, the path that the different paths that he put out there for Donald Trump and that for Kamala Harris. And
I'm still
again,
trying,
we're not.
I mean, that map of where she did not perform, the like completely grayed out map where she never overperformed Biden more than 3%. That's just rough.
I think there are two stories here. One is the burden that she faced, and to go back to the very beginning of the night when we did the right track, wrong track. 26% of the country thinks that the nation is in the right track. 72% think they're in the wrong track. And when it came to the performance of Joe Biden,
Donald Trump campaigned on mass deportations. So this
what
is
I'm saying
what
is
this
he could
vote
do
was for.
That's what I'm saying. My point is, whatever Donald Trump wants, if they have the Senate now, if they get the White House and if they get the House, if they keep the House, whatever Donald Trump wants will become law. There will not be the backstop of the Senate controlled by Democrats.
Did not want the backstop. This is what I'm trying to say. We may be looking at a map of voters who weren't looking to give him a backstop.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Not to get too sort of dorky here, but I think it is still possible, if he is president, that some big pieces of legislation could be stopped in the United States Senate, because legislation at this point still needs 60 votes. But it is the cabinet who he's going to have in his, not just in and around his administration, but again, the bench, that is all regular majority.
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about it, because the Supreme Court they ruled on the Chevron deference and basically said executive agencies can't have the untrammeled authority to do what they want. It has to be passed by Congress. And you could end up with the Democratic minority. I mean, again, all of this is somewhat speculative. Democratic minority in the Senate being able to block legislation, and the Trump agencies not able to enact it on their own.
Yep. Just one of many things that we would be talking about if Donald Trump does, in fact, win. We're not there yet. Jake, over to you.
Thanks, Dana. Let's bring you back to the key race alert and where we stand with the battleground states that we have not called yet. Pennsylvania, Donald Trump in the lead, 51.1%. Kamala Harris is 47.8%. Donald Trump has an almost 220,000 vote lead. That's with 93% of the estimated vote in from the great Keystone State. Michigan, Donald Trump up 52.4% to Harris's 45.8%. Donald Trump with a more than 244,000 vote lead in Michigan.
Rapport, which has manifested itself several times on different stages around the world. In India, also, of course, in that unforgettable, momentous Howdy Modi joint celebration, as well as, of course, in different multilateral fora. And Prime Minister Modi will be really looking forward to cementing a relationship that had entered a slightly tricky path over the last few months, especially on the back of some ideological differences. Let's go across to Sanjay Suri, who's at Washington, D.C., covering this election for CNN News 18. Sanjay Suri, it's very late in the night, but Modi being one of the first to congratulate Donald Trump, Macron and Netanyahu are the other notable leaders from around the globe that have done so. What's your reading of this quick message?
Well, Rahul, how good this turns out to be for America, we'll have to wait and see. But certainly, this is good news for relations with India. There is, as you were saying, a strong personal rapport between Trump and Prime Minister Modi, and that can only work to the advantage of India. There is a lot that the US and the Indian governments have been talking about. There have been strategic issues in the Indo-Pacific. There have been defense issues, both production and cooperation in other ways. There has been talk of stepping up trade. There has been talk of stepping up more US manufacturing in India, and while that is for private companies to do, the government has a lot to do to ease that kind of flow. There is a lot going on there. The Quad certainly needs a new emphasis, and that is all looking very promising. Now with Trump here in charge in the White House, not least there have been some humps and hurdles that have arisen between the US and India, and Trump, very much more than Harris, would be the better bet to get past those and to, at the very least, minimize the impact they could have on the larger relationship. So for India, this certainly is good news. Internationally, you were speaking, Rahul, about messages from Netanyahu, and that certainly will be something to watch for. Trump said in his speech, we heard just moments ago, that he made promises and he intends to keep them. One of the promises has been to end the Gaza war. Could he prevail upon Netanyahu to stop hostilities, to stop the current operations underway? Could he persuade Putin to pull back from Ukraine, or could he persuade Zelensky to accept the occupation of that land by Russian forces? It's all going to be very tricky internationally, but within the, as far as dealing with those wars and ending them, and he has promised loudly and often to do that, that's going to be the challenge for Trump now in the days and weeks to come.
Yes.
But clearly, so far as India goes and relations between US and India goes, this is good news.
It is good news. Sanjay Suri, just stay on with us because I want to go across to Siddhant Mishra, who joins me from the newsroom. Very important tweet coming at an extremely critical juncture in Indo-US ties, Siddhant. We have been seeing a few hiccups in the relationship around 2 or 3 issues. One is, of course, India's perceived proximity to Russia at a time in the backdrop of the Ukraine war. The United States has, of course, sanctioned Russia. Viewers did not want India to continue with its, quote, oil diplomacy, unquote, with Russia. On human rights, there has been some talk from the Harris camp as well as the Biden camp, but more exemplified by the Harris camp. And of course, this talk which routinely sort of surfaces under Democratic presidencies of democratic backsliding in India. Siddhant, all of this now might be actually consigned to the past because Trump is more of an isolationist. He doesn't like to get involved, at least that's what he says, in the internal affairs of other countries, especially allies.
Well, absolutely, Rahul. It's perhaps it's a good development as far as Indian interest is concerned. And I would like to start, Rahul, at the time when President Trump visited India, there were riots going on in the national capital. And when he was asked in the press conference, he said that it is India's internal matter. So that is President Trump for India. Not just that, Rahul. In fact, in last few months, we have seen the hiccups you were mentioning. There were a lot of commentary from the State Department. Before Prime Minister Modi's visit to US, the White House is meeting the separatist groups in United States. They were planning to bring transnational aggression law in place. The whole Pannoon fiasco, Nikhil Gupta getting extradited, etc., etc. Now we could perhaps at least expect from Donald Trump to have a fresh new outlook, fresh new viewpoint, especially on these particular issues. And second, and the most important one, Rahul, is President Trump is perhaps the first American leader of that stature to speak for the Hindus. And in fact, just few days back, he did make a social media post on X, perhaps speaking about the atrocities on the Hindu communities in Bangladesh. And he also assured that he looks forward to work with Prime Minister Modi. So where on one end, Rahul, the US politicians were ignorant about the atrocities on the Hindu community in Bangladesh, where they were calling it a work of Indian disinformation factory, the videos and the footages which were coming from Bangladesh. At that time,
what we're hoping to do is to pull out that clip of Donald Trump speaking with a group of influencers. You might remember this from a few days ago, just before the final leg really of the campaign, Siddhant, where he's talking to a group of YouTubers and he's talking about what he admired about Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in a sense reiterating his close connect and his admiration for the Prime Minister. So that interpersonal relationship does really have a transformative effect on overall ties, doesn't it, Siddhant?
Absolutely, Rahul. Now, White House has a precedent who would be in a hotline with the Indian Prime Minister. The kind of rapport and the understanding that Prime Minister Modi and President Donald Trump has is unprecedented, and that understanding and that friendship was never between President Modi, Prime Minister Modi and President Biden. Yes, there were interests of two countries involved. So the Quad progressed. The defense cooperation progressed, the jet engines, etc., etc. What we usually talk about. But when it comes to the personal rapport and personal understanding, now if suppose any department of US government is doing anything which is not in Indian interest, at least the Indian Prime Minister can take up a phone and call President Trump and tell him that this is not good for Indian interest.
Well, I'm sure at some level that sort of rapport at least functionally existed between Biden and Mr. Modi because of the overarching interstices between the two countries at different levels. But the point is well made. Sometimes viewers, and let me bring in Sanjay Suri here, sometimes interpersonal relationships at the apex matter a lot more in smoothing over wrinkles that might appear in inter-country relationships, Sanjay Suri. And that's really where this connect will play a role at a time when there have been sanctions against Indian entities. There have been suggestions from the United States that they're not very, very pleased with the Indian establishment in the manner in which it was pursuing some of its own national interests on foreign soils, including USA and Canada. All of that now hopefully might recede into the background. We might even have some follow-through in the Pannoon case where maybe this petition and the summons that were issued for top Indian officials might even be withdrawn or put on the back burner. Sanjay Suri.
Well, Rahul, on the Pannoon case, certainly the Indian government may find conversations with the US administration a little easier under Trump. There are a couple of caveats we do need to have in mind. One certainly is that Trump is a bit of a loose cannon. He's unpredictable. We sometimes don't quite know what he will do next and why. So there is that. Second, there is a legal track that has been operated, and the judicial system in the US, also in Canada, is to a considerable extent independent of the government. Of course, Domestically, we'll have to see what happens to all the cases against Trump, exactly how he drops them, because it's not likely those will proceed. But coming back to the issues with India, the conversations will be easier with the Trump administration, that they will therefore necessarily deliver that all that India wants is less certain. There are issues here, and within the US, within the State Department, there are issues over a US citizen, and those are not issues that Trump will be able to simply brush away. But without doubt, the conversations and a possible way forward is easier for India and Indian interests with Trump there than it likely would have been with Harris.
And of course, the social coalition that backs Kamala Harris, also, of course, the caucus within the party, the Democrat Party, would have expected her to take perhaps a more strident position on human rights issues, Sanjay Suri, but that's not going to happen.
Well, that that is not Trump's language. That's not the tone of his presidency leadership. That's not his style. Though again, we do need to recall that on the H-1B visa issues, it was the Trump administration that took a hard line, and the Indian government had some difficulty with that. So these are not absolutes. We can certainly look forward to an easing of issues, and the rapport you speak of, and no doubt there is a very strong rapport there between Modi and Trump. That certainly is going to help to ease out some of the creases that may arise, some of the humps that already exist. There are many moves that potentially could be made to strengthen operations under Quad, to strengthen economic ties, intelligence cooperation, defense cooperation, and a push from the top and a will from the top is very much more likely with Trump there than it might have been with Harris, who perhaps.
Okay, very quickly. Let me cut back. Yes, I didn't mean to cut you off, Mr. Puri. I just wanted to cut back to CNN, the news feed. There's more analysis of the election result unspools on the channel.
This trend continues. Let's get you an update on some key race alerts now. These are results coming into CNN as we're getting them. In New York's 19th district, this is in the Ithaca area. Josh Riley, a Democratic attorney, is currently about 3,600 votes in front of freshman Republican incumbent Mark Molinaro, 94% of the vote in that New York district. Another one to tell you about, this one on Long Island, another district Joe Biden won 4 years ago. Laura Gillen, a town supervisor in House District 4, is currently leading Republican incumbent Anthony D'Esposito, former NYPD officer, by roughly 6,148 votes, 92% of the vote in this district. Looking at the first House district in Arizona, this is the northern suburbs of Phoenix. You have Amish Shah, the Democrat in this race, an ER doctor, a slim margin, 742 votes ahead of incumbent Republican David Schweikert. Obviously, still a close race there, 56% of the vote in. Now, let's get you some more key races where Republicans are leading. Let's take a look, beginning with the state, or rather the district in Pennsylvania in the Lehigh Valley area. This is House District 7. You have Ryan McKenzie leading Democratic incumbent Susan Wild by roughly 5,500 votes, 99% of the vote in there. It looks like it's trending in Republicans' direction. In Michigan, House District 7, Tom Barrett leading by 17,000 votes against Curtis Hurdle, 97% of the vote there in the 7th district. This is in the Lansing area. This is actually the district that's got an open seat because Alyssa Slotkin is running for Senate. Keep your eyes on this one. Meantime, a key race alert from Alaska. Nick Begich, the Republican in this race, leading the Democratic incumbent Mary Peltola. She's a freshman who's actually the first Native Alaskan ever voted to Congress. This is a ranked choice, sort of open format in Alaska, so you'll see her going up against a fellow Democrat. But right now, Begich, 5,800 votes ahead, 55% of the vote in this at-large district, obviously Alaska, a state that Donald Trump won. So what does all this mean for the balance of power in the House of Representatives? The raw numbers right now, 169 for Democrats with 1 pickup, 197 for Republicans with 4 pickups, 69 seats remaining up for grabs. Anderson, as you know, 218 needed for control of the chamber.
All right. Boris Sanchez, thanks very much. We'll check in with you a little bit later on as well. Ashley Allison is joining us, as well as Scott Jennings. I want to hear from both of you. Ashley, obviously this is not the outcome you had hoped for. What do you think, what are you looking at about what went wrong?
Well, I think she wasn't able to put the coalition together she needed to in each of the states. It was never going to look the same, but we've always talked about this would be on the margins. So if you pull off even 1% of one of your base constituencies, which she was able to do he was able to do in many of them, you were not going to be able to keep that state or hold that state. And so I've heard a lot of people talk about the conversations we need to have. And I think we do need to have conversations as a party. But the conversation that I want to have are for people who showed up and voted for Kamala Harris and tell them to hold their head up high. I remember in 2016 having to walk back into the White House today, and I was embarrassed to go to work because I feel like I had failed our country. You know, despair is not the time to lose hope. It is the time to dig down, to do some soul searching and fight for a better day. Many of the communities that are most vulnerable and that are really afraid right now, the trans community, immigrants, people of color, even if there's polling or outcomes that are showing that some people of color voted for Donald Trump, you're worthy, you're visible, you're not alone. And so you can feel what you feel right now, but we have to do work to protect the most vulnerable.
Well, viewers, there you have it. The 47th President of the United States will be Donald Trump. He scripts an unprecedented comeback, only the second president to have returned to office after having lost after a first term. That in itself is unprecedented. Also, on a personal note, he's seeking vindication from the fact that for the first time in 2 electoral races, this is his third one, viewers, he's leading the popular vote, which suggests that many more people, many more social coalitions have actually turned out to vote for him, which somewhere along the line muddies the clear narrative that had built up before the result that America was almost perfectly cleaved down the middle. Here it is now quite clear that there are minorities, there are other groups of the voting public that might have crossed the aisle. Is that a good thing? Will that make America more cohesive, united? Will it lead to perhaps more magnanimity from Trump? All that we can explore now with Professor Salvatore Babones. We know him very well here in India. He's, of course, an American sociologist, leading intellectual. Professor Babones, first things first, how do you see this election result? What are the 3 or 4 data points that stick out in your mind on the back of which you can make certain assumptions?
The most incredible fact about this election is that it appears that Donald Trump has won the popular vote, and not only won it, but won it convincingly by a similar margin. I mean, to that with which Barack Obama won the popular vote in 2008 and 2012. I mean, this is not a squeaking by victory of the kind that all of the pundits had predicted, except I may note me on News 18 last night, where I told you that I strongly expected this would be a big Trump win, not a narrow Trump win. This winning the popular vote is just almost unprecedented for a Republican candidate in modern times. And that reflects the fact that Donald Trump is not a conventional Republican candidate. If I could trace this victory, the popular vote victory, to just one cause, it would be the shift in the vote of African American men. You just heard on CNN the commentator talking about the Democratic coalition. The Democratic Party has long treated its voters as a coalition of specific groups. All African Americans vote Democratic. All sexual minorities vote Democratic. All new immigrants vote Democratic. They have viewed these as voting blocks that they cobbled together. That's no longer the case. African American men, who make up about 7% of the U.S. electorate, used to vote in virtually zero numbers for Republicans. Now, of that 7% of the US electorate, it appears almost certain that 2% and likely up to 3% of the 7, that is, about a third of African American men have voted for Donald Trump. If that's the case, that swing in the African American vote from being 100% Democratic to being, a Democratic leaning group, that swing in itself is responsible for the entire popular vote swing between a typical Republican candidate and this Donald Trump win in 2024.
Now, how wasn't this picked up? I mean, you made an allusion to the fact that you were perhaps one of the very few commentators that predicted this sort of an outcome, an emphatic victory. How is it that none of the opinion polls and some of the exit polls didn't sort of home in on this favorable mandate to Trump? They almost seem to suggest that it could go either which way.
Polls at this point are mostly useless, and that's because the response rate for most political polls in the United States is under 3%. The very best polls, the Pew Research Center, who put a lot of effort into it, and they're a not-for-profit, so they don't have to make money on their polling, they get up to 8% response rates. So the gold standard, best possible response rate is 8%, which means that most of what you're getting when you see a poll is the pollsters modeling, statistical modeling of what the small number of people they've surveyed mean for the overall election. If the pollster believes the election was going to be close, then their statistical modeling will be tweaked to get that close outcome. Polling is no longer meaningful in any direct sense. Now, you're asking, how do I know what I know? Frankly, this may sound ridiculous to people. I watch Black YouTube. I listen to everybody. I have no particular, I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat. I just want to know what people think. I want to be a social scientist.
Right.
And if you watch minority voices on YouTube and Twitter, the shift in minority voices in America from being overwhelmingly anti-Trump, anti-Republican, Republicans are a bunch of white country club members, to minority voices being very interested in Donald Trump and what he has to say, reminiscing about the Trump presidency. After all, minority incomes rose during the Trump presidency for the first time in 40 years. It's not surprising if you follow actual minority voices, instead of being white and surveying minorities, if you actually listen to people from minority communities, the shift was very clear.
Yet many people amplified some of the, how should one put it, impolitic comments that Mr. Trump made about minorities of a certain ethnicity in the campaign, saying that this is the kind of prejudice he encompasses as a leader. And yet you're saying these minorities, in fact, if I look at the statistics, Mr. Babonde, and of course you're the master of that, we're also seeing Latino men that seem to have gravitated towards Donald Trump. How would this happen?
It happened because the era of soundbite politics is over. In the United States, at least, the mainstream news channels in the United States get tiny viewerships compared to social media. And on social media, you get long-form journalism. You get to hear what a person says. All of Trump's speeches are available on YouTube. All the talks, the Joe Rogan podcast that Trump did lasted 3 hours, and Joe Rogan has tens of millions of listeners. It's hearing the entire talk rather than the soundbite. You can pick out soundbites from Donald Trump that sound anti-minority, that sound bad, but if you listen to the whole clip, if you listen to the entire speech, you quickly realize that this is just something that has been taken out of context from a much longer statement. And I think people are intelligent. They do now go to their own media instead of having to rely on a major network to provide a 5-second soundbite. They're much better informed than the major media maybe would like them to be.
And just very quickly, coming back to the point about the forecasting, was it really a sample size issue, or was it preference falsification on the part of respondents? Because the one thing that some of Trump's allies, like Elon Musk, that have constantly criticize their opponents for is a cancel culture, is voter shaming, and that we're used to here in India too. Do you think that some of that, the fear of being cancelled, etc., made people a little conservative, excuse the pun, about voting for Mr. Trump?
We call that social desirability bias in surveys. And there's clear evidence that in 2016 and in 2020, there was social desirability bias, that people were reluctant to admit to being Trump supporters. I suspect a lot of that dissipated by 2024. And I say that again, just through circumstantial evidence that, for example, we see lots of Trump yard signs in America. In America, it's very common to put a bumper sticker on your car or a sign in your yard saying who you support. And that is something we didn't really see in 2016 and 2020 because people were a bit afraid to overtly express their support for Trump. No, the problem with the polls is much deeper than that. When you have a 70 or an 80% response rate for a poll, it's pretty easy to model what will the other 20% have said if you were to get them into the poll. When you have a response rate of literally 3% or 2%, that means you have no idea what most people think. You have to extrapolate from the 2 or 3% of people who respond to the poll what the other 97 or 98% of the population believes. That means polling has become an exercise in statistical modeling rather than an exercise in simple reporting of what people say. When that's the case, the biases, or I won't even say the biases, the expectations of the modelers entirely drive the result that they get.
That's a very interesting point to make, and perhaps we also need to pick up on that as a democracy that likes its electoral process to be robust, and obviously prediction and analysis also to be robust. But just coming back to the larger picture now, the Harris campaign, many of the Harris strategists made a huge, big deal about how they were leveraging decency in public discourse to frame the issues that they were championing. Number one, a commitment to democracy, gender rights, minority rights. Where did it go wrong for Kamala Harris? And are these not issues worth fighting for? Has the Trump wave now subsumed America in a sort of coarser discourse?
There's certainly a coarser discourse, and that reflects a shift from mainstream linear media to social media. The United States is now entirely a social media country. Social media stars get far higher multiples of the viewership of mainstream news channels. I mean, it's not even comparable at this point. Joe Rogan's viewership exceeds that of all major American cable news channels combined. Now, with the shift from a very manicured mainstream media presence to a much more open social media, comes a shift from a more formal language to a more informal language. You or I speak very differently when we're talking on television than we would talk in a conversation. Now, Donald Trump throughout, for the last 9 years, has spoken in public just as he would speak in a conversation. If you think of Donald Trump as your, a crotchety old grandfather, nothing he says would be surprising. That is, in a very opinionated elderly man, there's nothing he said that would be out of the ordinary, that would raise your thoughts like, why is he saying that? It only sounds strange because it's being said on television. We all speak differently to a formal audience than we do to an informal audience. Donald Trump has been running a campaign below the fold, that is, he's been running a campaign entirely on social media, while the Democrats, and Kamala Harris in particular, has been running a campaign above the fold. It's been entirely a public campaign, campaigning to mainstream media. And of course, the register of their voice and conversation reflects that.
Well, stay on with me, Salvatore Babones. I'm just going to go across very quickly to Sanjay Suri to get a few updates from the ground now. Sanjay Suri, what's unfolding in both the Kamala Harris camp and the Trump camp? Salvatore Babones, stay with me. Yes, Sanjay Suri.
Well, that, Rahul, is rather simple. Elation on one side, depression on the other. This is the very first stages of victory for Trump and defeat for Harris. But just to consider a thought arising from the conversation a minute back.
Yeah.
The fact is that, we still don't have a Trump landslide. Let's say the swing states. In these, the Reds have crossed the 50% just about. Just about. Now, it's the 2%, 1%, 3%. It is that vote that has made the difference. So even the polls were not necessarily wildly off their targets, though clearly not spot on accurate. But that does mean that the groups of people, or just let's say an aggregation of individuals who helped to cross the line, and they've done so in all the swing states, the Republicans that is, of course, that could be any group. Oddly enough, it could even be women. As recent as just a few hours ago, a suggestion has arisen that based on early data, the number of women who voted for Kamala Harris is reduced from the number of women who voted for Joe Biden. Again, Democrat, the last time Democrat, this time. So it's a reduced women vote. You could even argue that that small difference has been made by women turning away from Kamala Harris, and who would have thought that that is a likely scenario that could make a difference.
That's an important point.
Be any group, it could be.
Let me bring in Professor Babones, who is a sociologist, of course, very well known to all of us. Professor Babones, why isn't America ready for a woman president? This, we saw that with Mrs. Clinton. That didn't quite happen. Everyone thought she'd be the one. And now, of course, Harris.
America is certainly ready for a woman president. I don't think that's the issue. I mean, we've seen 45 men be defeated in the election, in the vote for president over the last 2.5 centuries. Somebody has to lose. And the fact that the loser is a woman, I really don't think is relevant here. I mean, the idea that if all women voted for a woman candidate, we would see a woman candidate win with 75% of the vote. I mean, people don't vote based on gender. Every family is split into roughly equal numbers of men and women, and families tend to vote the same way. So I think I would just resist the entire question. The idea that, why won't people vote for a woman? Well, half the country voted for a woman. And in fact, nearly half of Kamala Harris's voters, we will find out, will have been men. It's not, this gender issue, I think, is a non-starter. When a strong female candidate is put up against a relatively weak male candidate, we'll see a woman win the presidency, as indeed Hillary Clinton nearly won in 2016. Remember, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in 2016. Kamala Harris has fallen far short of Hillary Clinton's success there.
This is being described as a mandate, a clear mandate, a crystal clear mandate for change. What sort of change are we talking about, Professor Babones?
Look, there's always a mandate for change. Every election's a mandate for change. I don't think that's a particularly important narrative. This is a mandate for Trump. And let's be clear. And although a narrative can be spun that it's not such a big win for Trump, I'd just like to, point out the massive swings that have occurred. So in my birth state, where I was born in New Jersey, the final poll done before the election suggested that Kamala Harris would win New Jersey by 17 points, 17 percentage points. In fact, New Jersey went 51-47 for Kamala Harris. Now, Kamala Harris still won New Jersey, but not by anything like the margins of previous candidates. What we're seeing is a massive shift, especially among minority voters, not to favoring Donald Trump, but a shift from 98-2 or 95-5 to, 60-40. And that's the huge story here, that the Democratic parties, and I should say the Democratic Party establishment's stranglehold on certain segments of the electorate has simply been broken by an unconventional candidacy. It's that simple.
Right. Very, very interesting, Professor Babones. My final question to you. Do you see America healing again? Do you see them sort of closing ranks the American public, setting aside some of these differences. Some of them are quite elemental. I think I'd explored that question with you yesterday. What do you think is going to happen?
Look, let's distinguish between the American public and the American punditry. The American pundit class is going to melt down over this election result. We will see, again, organized people calling themselves the resistance to Donald Trump. It will be extreme. Especially after the Trump administration takes office, when we are likely to see a clearing out of appointees in the executive department, unlike anything we've seen before, at least not since the 19th century. In 2016, Donald Trump kept in place the establishment Republicans in the government. In 2024, he's promised to get rid of them. And he's put in place, Elon Musk and RFK Jr., who are both, let's remember, both Democrats, who he has said he will help guide his appointment process. So no, I don't think there will be a coming together among the American commentariat. That said, let's not let the commentariat speak for the people. Will ordinary Americans come together? I think we've already seen that. I really think we have to focus, and as we unpack this election over the next few weeks, the minority vote in the United States becoming roughly similar to the majority vote. That is, that racial and ethnic minorities have essentially become almost indistinguishable from white Americans in their voting patterns. That it's all about where you stand in the social hierarchy, not where you stand on race and ethnicity. That is a sea change. That is the most important thing happening in American political, in the American political space this year.
Well, it's fascinating talking to you as always, Professor Babons. Thank you very much. Let me introduce our viewers now to Samir Saran, President of the ORF, the Observer Research Foundation. Thank you very much for joining the broadcast. It's a momentous day. Perhaps a bit unprecedented given the odds that Trump was up against, history for one, and of course a formidable machine that was operating against him. Samir Saran, very quickly, your take on the US election, and then I really want to get into a little bit of how the India-US trade relationship, as well as, of course, the alliance, the strategic partnership is going to evolve under Trump. But your quick take on the election.
Rahul, thank you for having me. And, I'm as, in some sense, astounded by some of the numbers that are coming out. People are projecting him to win the popular vote. It's not an electoral college victory. It is a popular vote victory as well. And then you're talking about the magnitude of the victory being unprecedented. I was reading a report right now which suggests that this could be as big as probably Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, or George Bush, who was a wartime president in 2004. So this is a big, big victory for Donald Trump. This is not the number game. This is not, in some sense, a fixed election results that people were accusing him of in 2016. He's beaten them fair and square. And he's beaten them across demographics. And I think your previous speaker got it right. While the Democrats were trying to herd people into identity classes, Donald Trump has broken those barriers and has appealed to a much wider cross-section on, I think, essentially three vulnerabilities. The first, of course, is immigration. It was palpable from California to New York to the heartland of America. Immigration was an issue, and if you did not hear and see it, then you were blind. Inflation was hurting, and anyone who travels to the U.S. on an annual pilgrimage knows they pay much more every year for the same, confectionaries that they procure from the same store each year. And you know that, Rahul, you would have experienced it yourself.
That's right.
And the third, of course, is what I call the creation of a whole woke craft, which basically allowed men to be in women's bathrooms and be in women's boxing rings. And I think the whole the dislocation of American culture, mainstream culture, through this whole in many ways re-engineering of identity, gender, and place, was also not something that perhaps could pass muster the majority this time. And in many ways, Donald Trump probably picked up these three big issues, ran with them, You could see the results. And look, there'll be reams of scientific research papers written on these books, but probably as well on the comeback kid, because this is unprecedented. He was facing a organized machinery that reminded us of feeble democracies in emerging and developing countries, where you have police cases filed against an opposition, you have assassination attempts, you have state-appointed prosecutors going after them, you have judges appointed by a political party, arraigning him. So you saw, a third world election being fought, in a sense, in the oldest democracy of the world this time. And to be fair, it does no credit to the US.
I heard that before. I heard this last part of what you said before, ahead of the 2024 Lok Sabha elections also, the unequal level playing field, etc., etc. Very interesting take. But Samir Saran, I want to ask you this.
Look, here he was nearly barred from even being on the field. Forget about the unlevel playing field.
Yeah.
And they talk about Godi media. Oh my God. Godi media has been redefined by American mainstream media. They were standing next to the candidate on the bully pulpit and endorsing them. Yeah. There was no difference between a party worker and an editor-in-chief of a big broadcast network. That's what was happening in the US this time. And yet they will come out with a report on and give us certificates of which media is free, which media is not free. I think what the State Department must do is take their budget where they study what is happening around democracies around the world, and now study themselves for the next 4 years, and come every year with an improvement grade to themselves, that we have fixed this and we have now wanting to focus on the next one. I think, anyways, this is not the time for that, but congratulations to POTUS, number 47. And I think it's been a remarkable victory. And look, we do well with all presidents. So we don't have a skin in the game. We Americans have generally, every American presidency has only strengthened the relationship. Biden contributed a lot. He really took the relationship forward. Trump, in his previous avatar, expanded it to in new geographies. The Indo-Pacific, as the Quad and the Indo-Pacific as it operates today, was courtesy Donald Trump. So we have benefited from a string of American presidencies that have paid special attention to China. This one is not going to be any different. We will have to negotiate and renegotiate with the new Oval Office. There will be issues around trade and tariff and his in some sense pet peeve on preventing people from taking free rides, on American benevolence, which is fair. But he's also someone who's willing to do a good deal. And in some sense, if we are nimble, agile, and alert, there would be enough opportunities for India to architect a very bright common future together.
Now, it is interesting because there was, over the last year and a half, perhaps, with the Biden-Harris team, a big brotherly sort of condescension on human rights and, a certain paternalism that India was beginning to sort of feel a little uncomfortable with. And you saw that play out in an indelicate manner, let's put it like that, over the last 6 months, and quite publicly. So we even had, just before the Prime Minister visited the United States, a delegation of Sikh separatists meeting certain officials in the White House, in fact, on the eve of the visit of the Prime Minister. And that obviously would have left a bitter taste in anyone's mouth. There was summons to some of our top officials in government. Now, all of that, do you think that's going to sort of abate? Or will just die out a natural death without the imprimatur of the Trump administration?
Rahul, you have raised an important question, and I think it's important to tell all our compatriots in India that this is a US election which has decided the president of the United States, not the president of India. Yeah. We have our prime minister who leads us, and they have elected their own president. He will serve American interests and American idiosyncrasies as well. Certain American idiosyncrasies transcend the political divides, and they are not going to disappear. Some are personality driven, and in that sense, Democrats are more prone to be a little more paternalistic and patronizing in engaging with some other parts of the world, and Republicans are less. Although Republicans would be equally irritating when it comes to seeking economic and trade levelizations. So in some sense, they come with their idiosyncrasies. Some of it is personality driven, but a large part of it is institutional. So I suspect that it might be more elegant, that same issue that you were referring to, Rahul, it might be more elegant going ahead. It's not going to disappear. and those are still going to persist, and we will have to deal with them as partners. And by the way, to be fair, and I was saying this to someone in Canberra, where I am right now for the Ricina Down Under, I was just telling our Australian counterparts that look, what we have done well in the last 10 years is that we give back as good as we get. So in some sense, we don't hold back. If you speak to American commentators, they will tell you that Indians are highly prickly, or Indians are quite brash, as they call us these days, because that was a prerogative for American commentators. We are not supposed to have those views and have a viewpoint on their democracy while they should have on ours, right? So my point here is that we have a fairly equal conversation now, and we can handle these pinpricks. The substance is not likely to be altered. The strategic substance, the security partnerships, the defense partnerships, they are likely to continue to be strengthened in the days ahead. And the trade and economic partnerships, like in every era, will be reset and remodeled so that both of us benefit. But Rahul, the inelegance that was in display might be not on the table anymore.
Okay, very quickly, Mr. Saran, I know you probably have to get on with your day. Just wanted to ask you this is very important, because there's been an emphasis from the Trump campaign on tariffs, on open trade borders, so to speak. And India, of course, enjoys its greatest export destination is the United States. Can that actually have an impact going forward? Is Trump going to push that agenda, and how does India react to this?
Look, even in the previous presidency, he had that agenda. And kudos to our Prime Minister and Foreign Minister for having managed that particular mood that was prevalent even then. And by the way, he threatened us a few times even in his first term about imposing tariffs and India-specific action.
That's right.
I think what we have to do in the days ahead is to prevent any India-specific action. If there is a general tariff that he seeks to introduce across a class of countries, I think we can navigate that, and we can actually benefit from that, and we can seek special carve-outs based on our special relationship. Could be around the joint manufacturing complexes which benefit American companies, for example, the Apple production in India, or defense production in India, or some other such sectors where there is a clear interest for both corporations, for the two different countries and their private sector to benefit from. So I think that would be fine. But an India-specific tariff is something that we have to make sure does not ever come to fruition. And in fact, if we are able to do that, and which I'm quite confident we will be able to, I think the rest is a national prerogative. We have industrial policies, they have industrial policies. We have a Make in India that we promote so aggressively and with great pride. They have a Make America Great Again. The IRA, or the Make America Great Again, is basically an industrial policy of America to benefit their own corporations. We will have to negotiate. So it's not going to be easy, but at least with him, it's simpler. We know what he wants. There is a degree of deal making which is quite apparent in the design stage itself that we can actually seek to further.
And since you have a global view, do you think that Trump is going to intercede and perhaps end wars? Most importantly, the Ukraine war on the continent, and of course in our immediate neighborhood in West Asia?
Look, I think there are three issues here when you look at a global scan. I think the most important relationship that will face some headwinds will be the transatlantic partnership. The oldest and strongest relationship is going to be under stress. That's the European-American relationship. And we'll have to see what the fallout of that could be. There could be a pulling back of the EU from the Atlantic relationship. In which case, what does EU do as its options? Does it start cozying up to China? Does it start finding alternative trading partners like us or in other parts of Asia and Africa? We'll have to see how Europe readjusts to this new development. Or it could be that Trump 2.0 actually is going to do a new deal with Europe, where having seen the new European appetite for investing in defense budgets, there could be a possibility that he might change his mind on NATO and change his mind on the utility of the transatlantic arrangement. So I think the transatlantic partnership is perhaps the first one that I would point out. The second, of course, is the Middle East. And here I think there are two big questions in my mind. One, because of this presidency, is the Gaza operation going to now be subsumed into a larger Iran-Israel dynamic? And I think that is something that we should keep a lookout for, because I know you know Donald Trump has been speaking about Iran during his campaign as well, and I have a feeling that this could very well become a Iran-centered conflict rather than the one that deals with Hamas and the Palestinians and the Gaza Strip. So I think that's the second area that we need to watch. And you'll have to see this in the context of the fact that he's also the architect of the Abraham Accords, which seeks a Middle East that is at peace. And in some sense, Iranian peace with Saudi Arabia and with others embellishes the peace arrangement that had been architected by him. So he has to balance his friend Netanyahu's desire for a tactical response versus the larger objective of a peaceful Middle East, which can be conducive for American businesses and American economic growth. So I think that's the second area we should watch out for. The third, of course, is the Indo-Pacific and China, and of course the Quad. And here I think there is going to be a degree of continuity. Because basically the Trump policies were adopted by Biden, and I believe the Biden policies are going to be, in many ways, be carried forward with Trump's own flavor added to it the second time around. So in that sense, I see in the third region a greater degree of certainty than in the other two regions, which are the Middle East and the European relationship.
Are you surprised that the Sensex is sort of rocketing up and also, of course, the Dow futures?
No, I'm not surprised. So I'm not surprised at all. Look, he ran on taxation, on lower taxes, right? And the other one was running on higher taxes. So I think his presidency might actually now give a new lease of life to the stock exchanges that were struggling over the past few weeks. In some sense, they were plateauing or moving marginally up and below their normal levels. But I think you would, in some ways, it's a pro-business election. In many ways, the businesses see this as a pro-business election. And Elon Musk ran the campaign. So in some sense, you see a corporate mogul being actually acknowledged by him in his first speech as being the man, and his business being described in glowing terms. So yes, I think you would expect that the stock market would respond to the Trump election, even though most other left of center channels have not yet responded to it. So I have not seen any one of them yet declare his presidency, unless you have, Rahul, and I have missed out on something. But I have not seen anyone calling out his presidency yet.
Well, look, Samir Saran, fascinating to speak to you as always. Thank you very much for that 360 view, especially also from an India perspective. Let me just very quickly tell you also that Prime Minister Modi has been one of the top 3 global leaders, in fact, very quickly on to actually have congratulated Mr. Trump. And that,
very
of course,
interesting that you have Zelensky, Macron, and Modi congratulate Donald Trump right up.
Yes,
very interesting.
What do you make of that, actually? What do you make of that?
I don't want to make anything out of it.
Look, even before CNN called the election, the Prime Minister was out there tweeting his congratulations on the back of course, an acceptance speech.
Prime Minister and Trump share a chemistry, which is older, right? And he has, even in his interview, spoken glowingly about his personal relationship with the Prime Minister, even though he keeps calling India a tariff king and all. But personally, when it comes to the Prime Minister, he's always warm and effusive. He's been, he's distinguished between India and Prime Minister Modi in some sense. And he acknowledges him as a tough negotiator and someone who's serving his country. In that sense, that is his view. Zelensky, I think, is clever diplomacy, and he did the right thing. I think he doesn't want to be caught flat-footed, and of course, French exceptionalism and Macron continue to surprise the world. I think that's my way of justifying what.
Well, at least, as in the sequence we broke it in, Netanyahu was the first off the blocks, and that
Netanyahu. I forgot to mention him because I thought I'd spoken about him during the Iran thing. But of course, Netanyahu was
So
you're right.
It's interesting. Everyone who seems to have a stake really got off the block very, very quickly. That's very interesting. Viewers, signaling, messaging, very, very important in global diplomacy today. Samir Saran, thank you very much for speaking to me. Let's hope we can have another conversation in the next few days. Let me bring in Sanjay Suri, who's been standing there like this sentinel, really, doing a fantastic job. Well into the night. You're going to probably have breakfast somewhere very soon. Sanjay Suri, give us the big picture now. As you saw it, the big moments in this campaign, perhaps some of the mistakes that Harris made and where really Trump won this election?
Well, the reason Trump won simply is because he is himself. If he had to lose, it would be because he is himself. He has a very dominant personality that really overrides other issues. And we've been talking about the issues, immigration, and certainly that as an issue worked very, very definitely to Trump's advantage. There has been a great deal of concern over immigration right across the US, more naturally in the South than elsewhere, but really this is across the country, and he is seen as the one who will deliver what people want. Whether he can actually deliver the return of millions of people from the US, that is a tricky one that we'll have to watch out for. He has promised to do that. He has said he'll keep his promises. It won't be easy. The economy, certainly the broad picture, the macro picture is looking very good for the US. But that is not to say that that is how people are feeling it. People are feeling the expenses very, very heavily. And this is turning out to be a struggle for the middle class. And the economy is something that he's pledged to deliver on. So that clearly worked for Trump. Not the economy, of course, not a delivery, but the promise of delivery. But really, these are issues where better bet by a significantly larger number of people than would have trusted Harris for it. But really, above all this, it is a question on people's mind and has been the question, not this issue, that issue, but do we want Harris in the White House? Do we want Trump? Are we happier with Trump as our leader or Harris? And I think that's where, on the strength of being who he is, he has prevailed, even if that means that he has the personality with what many people see as a problem. Well, that is how people see it, but certainly that has worked for him, and that's delivered presidency to him in this remarkable second term.
So the two things that happened which sort of made people lose focus really of the real issues and perhaps also of Trump's connect. And that is that the moment Biden withdrew and Kamala Harris came in, a lot of money came into the Harris campaign, so much so that she's actually outspent Trump by about $300 to $400 million. All that support, that bump in the polls, etc., all seem to have somehow come to naught. And isn't that very striking?
It is, Rahul, and I could actually see some of where that money is being spent through touring Pennsylvania.
Okay.
The Democrats were all over the place. Their office was buzzing. They would have hundreds of workers at one center, more at another. They had resources, they had placards, they had transportation to take them door to door and deliver the message, persuade people to come out and vote. This was a saturation outreach. And it was a very well-resourced, very well-funded outreach. There was no question about that. The fact is that it didn't quite tip the numbers over as they had expected it would, and as many of us expected it would. The Republican physical outreach was almost minuscule relative to this, certainly across Pennsylvania. And that was the one that both parties put really they put everything they had into that campaign in that state. So the Democrats have tried, they have been better resourced, but there are factors that have prevailed for Trump, and I wouldn't quite accept that the race issue has now been erased from the US and that this election is evidence of that. That clearly is not the case. Of course, we await more data on this, but in Georgia, for example, there was a survey carried out on the voting pattern, and very clearly it is people who are white, people who are male, who came out overwhelmingly to vote for Trump. On the other side, we have seen a slight increase in vote for Trump, but that is not to say that we are seeing a balance. That is not to say that we are seeing the imbalance erased. There has been some readjustment, and in society terms, that is to the good, of course, but it's not something that has quite disappeared. This has not been a color-free election.
A very interesting perspective there. But let me just come back to you on this point, and this is important, on the Harris campaign and the fact that she hasn't delivered a concession address even now. Is that surprising to you? I remember in 2008 when Obama won, and that was, again, you know, the first black American to have swept into office. Harris would have been the first black woman, a minority in a minority actually, to have swept into office. But against McCain, that was, and McCain came out and gave this glowing speech, which was really heartwarming and eschewed of all, you know, rancor. It was a beautiful speech that carried the moment really and underlined history. We haven't seen Harris come out and concede. Are you surprised at all?
Well, I think this is just a matter of time. I have no doubt that she and some of the people working with her are at the moment scripting a teary speech that should happen sometime this morning. That will be on its way, and she has, of course, no choice but to concede. And she has to say something when she does so, and we are waiting to hear what that will be. But clearly, she hasn't quite resonated. She did, as we heard, propel herself through her career very aggressively, one has to say, moving up the ladder within California in legal positions from one to the other. Then she did form associations that would help her career, and she was targeting the White House all along. This was also very clear. We know from her that she had her mother messaging her, and the thoughts of her message that never do anything half. Go for it, just go for it all the way. She has been driven by all that, and to have now really come unstuck at the end is going to be devastating for her. There's no real political comeback for her after this. We'll be hearing a farewell from her. She will offer her views on what went wrong. She will also, no doubt, suggest that it didn't go as badly wrong as the broad numbers suggest, that there has been a good deal of vote for her, even in the swing states, that it was a relatively narrow loss. No doubt we'll hear all that and more from her fairly soon.
Well, looking forward to all those developments. Rolling coverage continues here on CNN News 18. Thank you, Sanjay Suri. A brilliant job done by you. We're going to take a very short break. But before that, hear from the 47th putative President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. He's turned out to be a good choice. I took a little heat at the beginning, and we're going to have a great 4 years, and we're going to turn our country around, make it something very special. But we had no wars. They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness.
Obviously, of the first family now as we see it, the president extremely complimentary of his wife and of his family, who said have gone through hell and back in the last 8 years, several times on different stages around the world. In India, also, of course, in that unforgettable, momentous Howdy Modi joint celebration, as well as, of course, in different multilateral fora. And Prime Minister Modi will be really looking forward to cementing a relationship that had entered a slightly tricky path over the last few months, especially on the back of some ideological differences. Let's go across to Sanjay Suri, who's at Washington, D.C., covering this election for CNN News 18. Sanjay Suri, it's very late in the night, but Modi being one of the first to congratulate Donald Trump, Macron and Netanyahu are the other notable leaders from around the globe that have done so. What's your reading of this quick message?
Well, Rahul, how good this turns out to be for America, we'll have to wait and see. But certainly, this is good news for relations with India. There is, as you were saying, a strong personal rapport between Trump and Prime Minister Modi, and that can only work to the advantage of India. There is a lot that the US and the Indian governments have been talking about. There have been strategic issues in the Indo-Pacific. There have been defense issues, both production and cooperation in other ways. There has been talk of stepping up trade. There has been talk of stepping up more US manufacturing in India, and while that is for private companies to do, the government has a lot to do to ease that kind of flow. There is a lot going on there. The Quad certainly needs a new emphasis, and that is all looking very promising now with Trump here in charge in the White House. Not least, there have been some humps and hurdles that have arisen between the US and India, and Trump, very much more than Harris, would be the better bet to get past those and to, at the very least, minimize the impact they could have on the larger relationship. So for India, this certainly is good news. Internationally, you were speaking, Rahul, about messages from Netanyahu, and that certainly will be something to watch for. Trump said in his speech, we heard just moments ago, that he made promises and he intends to keep them. One of the promises has been to end the Gaza war. Could he prevail upon Netanyahu to stop hostilities, to stop the current operations underway? Could he persuade Putin to pull back from Ukraine? Or could he persuade Zelensky to accept the occupation of that land by Russian forces? It's all going to be very tricky internationally, but within the, as far as dealing with those wars and ending them, and he has promised loudly and often to do that, that's going to be the challenge for Trump now in the days and weeks to come.
Yes.
But clearly, so far as India goes and relations between US and India goes, this is good news.
It is good news. Sanjay Suri, just stay on with us because I want to go across to Siddhant Mishra, who joins me from the newsroom. Very important tweet coming at an extremely critical juncture in Indo-US ties, Siddhant. We have been seeing a few hiccups in the relationship around 2 or 3 issues. One is, of course, India's perceived proximity to Russia at a time in the backdrop of the Ukraine war. The United States has, of course, sanctioned Russia. Viewers did not want India to continue with its, quote, oil diplomacy, unquote, with Russia. On human rights, there has been some talk from the Harris camp as well as the Biden camp, but more exemplified by the Harris camp. And of course, this talk which routinely sort of surfaces under Democratic presidencies of democratic backsliding in India. Siddhant, all of this now might be actually consigned to the past because Trump is more of an isolationist. He doesn't like to get involved, at least that's what he says, in the internal affairs of other countries, especially allies.
Well, absolutely, Rahul. It's perhaps it's a good development as far as Indian interest is concerned. And I would like to start, Rahul, at the time when President Trump visited India. There were riots going on in the national capital. And when he was asked in the press conference, he said that it is India's internal matter. So that is President Trump for India. Not just that, Rahul. In fact, in last few months, we have seen the hiccups you were mentioning. There were a lot of commentary from the State Department. Before Prime Minister Modi's visit to US, the White House is meeting the separatist groups in United States. They were planning to bring transnational aggression law in place. The whole Pannoon fiasco, Nikhil Gupta getting extradited, etc., etc. Now, we could perhaps at least expect from Donald Trump to have a fresh new outlook, fresh new viewpoint, especially on these particular issues. And second, and the most important one, Rahul, is President Trump is perhaps the first American leader of that stature to speak for the Hindus. And in fact, just few days back, he did make a social media post on X, perhaps speaking about the atrocities on the Hindu communities in Bangladesh. And he also assured that he looks forward to work with Prime Minister Modi. So where on one end, Rahul, the US politicians were ignorant about the atrocities on the Hindu community in Bangladesh, where they were calling it a work of Indian disinformation factory, the videos and the footages which were coming from Bangladesh. At that time,
what we're hoping to do is to pull out that clip of Donald Trump speaking with a group of influencers. You might remember this from a few days ago, just before the final leg really of the campaign, Siddhant, where he's talking to a group of YouTubers and he's talking about what he admired about Prime Minister Narendra Modi. In a sense,
24 hours, 5th and 6th of November 2024. And we have only to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for this, to our viewers on the Digiverse. And of course, on television, you continue to back us and continue to stick with us and continue to stay on with us, because we will not just bring you the elections from there, the reactions from there, but also how it matters to us, that is Bharat, that is India. Harsh Shringla-ji, former Foreign Secretary, is with us. We have Siddhant and also Sanjay Suri with us, who've been reporting, covering the US elections very, very closely for us on ground. Sanjay Suri's traveled all the way from the UK into the US of A, and he's been doing some phenomenal work. Harsh Shringla-ji, please allow me to go across to our team, the reporters first, before I come across to you. Sanjay Suri, like you, we are given to understand that there are many from Labour Party, who actually travelled to try and canvass. Is that true? And all that canvassing seems to have come to a naught, because it's all gone into the jholi of Donald Trump.
Well, it's quite true that a number of people from the Labour Party did come and vote for the support of the Democrats in their campaign. And the idea was that they would bring expertise and their strategizing experience of winning the UK election to the Democrats to deliver a similar victory for them. That's not quite happened, and the Labour leadership had to distance itself from that kind of effort with some difficulty. Now it will have to distance itself even more emphatically, considering that it's going to be Trump. But really, it's just not the Labour advisors who failed, it's the Democrat Party itself that has come unstuck. And we do have to recognize that, Jo Jeeta So Sikandar, that is true, but the swing states have, as predicted, been the critical factor, and through these swing states, the Republicans have just about crossed the 50% mark. So the margin is clear, it's decisive. We are still short of a landslide, but really the fact is that the numbers speak for themselves, and the numbers are on their way, and no doubt.
Did you get a sense that this could come to pass? Did you get a sense that this could come to pass? Because you're there at the final days, the frenzy of campaigning, plus also on voting day when people were going out. What was your own sense, Sanjay?
Well, there are two sides to that, and I was quite extensively in Pennsylvania, and what I did see was a very well-resourced, very well-organized Democrat campaign to reach out to voters, to go door to door and down street to street to persuade people to come out and vote Democrat. We didn't see anything of that kind from the Republicans in many of the areas in Pennsylvania. But that clearly was some sign in itself that the Democrats felt that they needed to do this, that they felt that there was a need to go out and reach people and to try and persuade them, because they couldn't be sure that they would come out on their own and vote for the party. So it was a sign of perhaps a degree of desperation to try and reach out to voters. It was very, very well resourced, but it was not clear that it would not deliver. It clearly did not. The Republicans have crossed the 50% mark in Pennsylvania.
Right.
So now, of course, it's going to be...
Sanjay, I'm going to interrupt you because we have Harsh Shringla ji, the former envoy to the US, and he knows a thing of two, if not much more, about US politics. Harsh Shringla ji, now from the studio into this digital connection right now through the day, I hope you'll join us again back in the studio this evening. But I'm going to ask you the same question again. Who is better for Bharat? You had weighed the pros and cons, Trump vis-a-vis Kamala Harris. But before that, let me also ask you, did you, I'm sure you still have your sources back in the US, crossover in the US. Did you somewhere get the inkling that this may go the red way, this may go the Trump way, this election?
You know, I'll be honest with you. I think even the closest supporters of Trump, those who are in the Trump camp, did not say that they were in for a win. I think it was a very, very close contest. It was nail-biting. But the fact is that the people of the United States have chosen for change. They've chosen, I think, gone in for strong leadership as they see it. And in many senses, I think the results have been quite phenomenal, in the sense that we have a clean result, not only in terms of the popular vote and in terms of the electoral college, but also perhaps, control of the Republicans over the Senate, possibly even the House. And that would be unprecedented. It would give Donald Trump the possibility of far-reaching changes that he could bring about. I was just telling someone just a short while ago that, when it comes to issues like immigration and green cards, and Trump has promised that he would fast-track green cards for Indian students when there's a huge bottleneck there. And the problem always is that when you initiate legislation, one house, the other house blocks it. But now, with control over both the House and Senate, Trump can push through legislation of an unprecedented kind. And I think there would be, he would have the ability. The people of the United States have given him the mandate to really govern in a manner that they feel US needs to not only, deal and engage with a very, very volatile global situation, but also to deal with their own issues back at home, whether it's, the economy, employment, issues that are very, very critical for the day-to-day lives of American people.
Right. But Harsh Shringla ji, how would you see the Prime Minister's response? He was one of the first few, global leaders who congratulated Donald Trump. But the words, the choice of words, is there, would you want to weigh in on that? Have they been very carefully chosen, the way the entire congratulatory message was worded by the Prime Minister?
Well, look, it's very clear that, Prime Minister Modi has had a very good relationship with a number of US presidents, starting with President Obama. But I have been able to personally witness the connect that he's had with Donald Trump. I mean, he's had a very strong connect. They have a good chemistry. Trump himself has spoken about this on a number of occasions. He has called Prime Minister Modi my very good friend. He has said that he not only regards him highly for his, own sort of politics and his own sort of electoral performances, but also in terms of his, I would say, the way he comes across in relationships, comes across in terms of substance, and the value that he adds to any engagement that is there. So Trump definitely, places high premium on the friendship with Prime Minister Modi. So that is a very unique factor. That chemistry is there with you can have a good relationship with a lot of world leaders, but the sort of connect that Prime Minister Modi has with Donald Trump is absolutely unique. And I think that will see that relationship move forward rapidly in a second Trump presidency. Please keep in mind that we had some of the most phenomenal events during the Trump presidency, the Howdy Modi event in which
Yes.
Prime Minister Modi said, "Ab ki baat Trump Sarkar," and 6 years down the line, you have that possibility, that event happening. He also invited President Trump to India, where he received again a very, very exceptional welcome by 100,000 people in Ahmedabad in that stadium in the Namaste Trump event. And I think these two events are etched in Trump's mind as being some of the most defining features of his 4 years of presidency. Absolutely politically phenomenal outreach.
So how will this help us? Because this time we're given to understand the oil lobby. He spoke about Bobby, and he spoke about the oil lobby saying, leave the oil to me. There is the arms lobby, which has backed Donald Trump. He's actually scored, the Financial Times has actually now put out data which says that he's only made the red states redder, and he's won most of the swing states. Out of the 7 swing states, he's taken bulk of them. So, and the map actually replicates the states that he turned in 2016, but he's turned them in a far bigger number and far more towards the Republicans this time. Now, how is this personal equation going to help Bharat? Because the arms lobby is going to push pressure on, to try and buy more arms. The pharma lobby, there will be pressure to make inroads and open the doors for entry into our country. There is the oil lobby, energy. Now, at all these levels, how much will this personal equation help us? And of course, the tariffs that will come into play now.
So at a strategic level, there are two areas where there is a great amount of convergence. One is the desire to end conflict. I think both Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump have spoken about bringing an end to conflicts. So from that point of view, I think we are on the same ground. And I feel that if Trump was able to bring a satisfactory conclusion to the Ukraine event, it will also take an irritant off that relationship, because at the end of the day, there was a divergence in policy on Ukraine. The second area is energy. Energy, for India, a country like India, which imports 80% of its energy requirements, the cost of oil has to remain constant or lower than what it is. And Trump is talking about bringing down the prices of oil.
Yeah.
He is encouraging fracking. He's encouraging other means to bring down prices of oil. We already import about $10 billion of oil from the United States. We have diversified our sources of import, and I think there is scope to expand on that. There was a proposal to invest in Louisiana and the pipelines there, etc. I think a lot of that can be done. And also, I think we can, as far as we are concerned, the US is, a major defense partner of ours. We are working across the board on the defense sector and interoperability. Today, under our Atmanirbhar defense policy, we're inviting American companies to come and work with us on joint technology, joint, let's say, research and development, on manufacturing, on joint ventures. And I think this is a trend that we will see continue, where there's a mutuality of interest on both sides.
Do you believe Trump will be more amenable to understanding Bharat's concerns with respect to these K extremists? Will there be a change in the attitude of the Five Eyes? What's happened in Bangladesh? Will all of those dynamics regionally for us change? Because he's taken a very clear adversarial position vis-a-vis China and Pakistan, two entities who are also a bane for us. One trade-wise, the other terror-wise.
Absolutely, where he imposed 25% tariffs on $360 billion of Chinese goods. It gave us inroads into the US market that we never had before. Our exports shot up. At the same time, I think he was one of the US presidents who actually went across and cut military assistance to Pakistan completely. Zero military assistance to Pakistan, brought other assistance down to a very negligible level. So he's done what he's had to do, and he coined the term Indo-Pacific. The Pacific Command was made into the Indo-Pacific Command. So from a strategic perspective, 2+2 dialogue, everything that we are talking about, major defense partner, India became a major defense partner in 2018 under the Trump presidency. So all of this, I think, is a sign that Trump looks at the larger picture. When we talk about comprehensive global strategic partnership, I think Trump understands that very, very well. I don't think he will give any salience to some of these issues that are there on the table. I'm not saying they'll go away, because there are processes that are underway. But the White House is not going to, I think, expend too much effort in examining those very closely. So some of these irritants, whether it is US policy in our region, in our neighborhood, as you mentioned. It is issues relating to India's domestic policy. It is, allegations that were thrown at us at a certain time. I think these will find their own place, and they will be distractions that will not come in the way of the larger strategic picture. And keep in mind that we had almost concluded a free trade agreement with the
Yes.
previous Trump administration. So when you talk about high tariffs, etc., I think that's the way to go. We create openings for each other's industries. It's a win-win situation where we export more to the United States, they export more to us. And I think this is the way that we have to deal with the presidency. And we have done that before, and I think we have the scope to take that same copybook out and replicate it in a successful manner in a second very decisive Trump presidency.
No, but American policy experts believe that it oscillates between isolationism and interventionism. Now, how do you see this second tenure of Donald Trump? And what do you think would be perhaps the key first 5 boxes that you would like ticked by, say, March, April 2025, once Donald Trump assumes office?
If by isolation you mean that he would want to pull out of conflicts that are currently going on, I think that would be correct. He has already stated that he wants to bring an end to the Ukraine conflict. I think the United States has the ability to do that because it controls all the resources and the key factors that go into that conflict. They are also able to offer Ukraine a very, very good reconstruction package that would bring that country back on track. At the same time, he has told Netanyahu reportedly that he has to bring that conflict to an end before he takes over as president in January, in the third week of January. So from every perspective, I think he's moving towards a certain position. If that is isolationism, that works for us. If he's pushing NATO to pay more for their requirements, that's between the United States and NATO. Interventionist is, I think, when you are proactive in ensuring that certain areas and certain entities are I would say, given greater attention. Obviously, the United States is a great, I would say, issue with the rise of China and the way that China has asserted itself, whether it's the Taiwan Straits or whether it's with Japan or even on our own borders. And you would find that in many senses, he would be far more aggressive than the Biden administration has been on issues relating to that country. Keep in mind that in the last month alone, and I think we did mention this briefly in your previous thing, he mentioned the word China 40 times.
Yes.
Whereas Kamala Harris didn't mention China at all. And so he has kept his focus on the big picture. The Republicans, especially under Trump, understand the big picture. And I think that is very important for our relations.
My final question to you now, and I look forward to a longer interaction in the evening, Harshingla ji. The question is the involvement of the US deep state. Now, they will have that is something that continues. There is an administration and there is a system that continues irrespective of who comes to power, and I'm sure you are well aware of that with your level of experience and understanding. What changes there?
Like any other democracy, the US has checks and balances. You've got the presidency and the cabinet. You've got Congress, which is a very, very strong check. The legislature, you've got the judiciary, but you've also got the agencies. You've got Department of Justice, the FBI, you've got the CIA, you've got the Department of Defense and the Pentagon. All of these organizations work in a certain manner, a manner that is systematic. So, as I said, some of these issues will stay on the table, but how much importance Trump gives it, how much importance his administration gives is what is, I think, very relevant for us. Many of these issues can be resolved. We've always said that we're willing to work to resolve many of the issues that are on the table. I think with a reasonable approach, we can find solutions to many of the issues
I ask you that specifically because there's trouble in the Northeast. We know what the Mizoram Chief Minister said on US soil, what's happening in Manipur, this entire what Sheikh Hasina actually alleged that the West wanted to do, and it was an American idea. She said it's a white man, but indicated towards America. Now, when all of those come, it's also a matter of national security and, of course, our sovereignty, territorial integrity for us.
Yeah, absolutely no compromise on our sovereignty and territorial integrity. I think that we have to be very clear on any administration that's there. But I think it's all a matter of engagement. You have to engage, and especially an administration like the Trump administration will need to be engaged at all levels. You have to engage the White House. You have to engage the State Department, to engage different interlocutors, engage Congress, and that sort of engagement will keep some of this at bay. I mean, and we have to constantly, I think, be there. Management of this is very, very critical. We've done it in the past. There's no reason why we can't do it in the future.
True. So we've got our hands full, but we've got also hope around on our side that it will all materialize in Bharat's favor. Harsh Shringlaji, we'll take this conversation forward in the later this evening on Prime Time. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Let's go across to Siddhant and Sanjay Suri, who've been listening to Harsh Shringla, former envoy to the US. Now, he's made a few pertinent points. Now, Siddhant, what's the conversation in the corridors here within the MEA?
Well, the support for India is bipartisan in US, Anand. But, there's a difference when it comes to dealing with Biden administration and Trump administration. And in fact, you also pointed out in your conversation with Harsh Shringla, here we have a person in White House, a president in White House, who is available on a speed dial for Prime Minister Modi, and perhaps the rapport that both leaders have will perhaps serve will work in the India's interest. Now, in fact, in the run-up to the polls also, Anand, we have seen multiple times Donald Trump referring to Prime Minister Modi. In fact, he called him the nicest human being. He also went on to say he's a total killer. So that is a level of understanding between the two leaders. And in past few months, Anand, we have seen that, it's fine. The Quad has progressed, the defense cooperation, Stryker, drone deals, jet engines, etc., etc. But at the same time, we also cannot forget what is happening as far as the indictments in United States courts is concerned. How the Indian NSA was summoned by the US court ahead of the Prime Minister's visit to United States. We also cannot forget that how the White House met the separatist leader ahead of the Prime Minister Modi's visit to United States. So, we could expect at least Trump and his administration to have a fresh viewpoint outlook towards these particular issues. At the same time, Anand, the way Justin Trudeau is perhaps throwing allegations at India, that cannot be, that can never be possible without United States support, the Five Eyes alliance partners. So as far as this particular domain is concerned, we could expect President Trump to have a fresh new outlook, viewpoint as far as these issues are concerned, and also,
so we'll also have to represent the facts, and we'll also have to put things there. Harsh Shringlaji also said that there will be a different perspective, and how much, it's not that the matter is off the table, will it